Troutdale City regular council meeting to order. And we'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Glenn, would you like to lead that?
Sure.
Please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So we're ready for a roll call.
Councilor Ritma.
Here.
Council President Ritma.
Here.
Councilor Caswell. Councilor One.
Here.
Councilor White.
Here.
Councilor Wittrin.
Present.
Councilor Glantz.
Present.
Mayor Lauer.
And Mayor Lauer is under the weather, and we appreciate him staying home if he is, but we wish him get well soon. I'm gonna chair the meeting for as council president. And we'll start off with any agenda update, Ray?
Mr. Council President, there are no agenda updates. We will go as stated.
All right. Well, the first item on the agenda, or number 2, is public comment. Public comment on non-agenda and consent agenda items is welcome at this time. Public comment on agenda items will be taken at the time the item is considered. Public comments should be directed to the presiding officer and limited to matters of community interest or related to matters which may or could come before council. Each speaker shall be limited to 5 minutes for each agenda item unless a different amount of time is allowed by the presiding officer with the consent of council. The council and mayor should avoid immediate or protracted responses to citizen comments. I open up the floor here in the council chambers for public comment on non-agenda items. So please come forward, state your name and the city where you reside.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Saul Pompeyo, and I'm the owner of Restaurante Pompeyo in downtown. This afternoon, I want to aware you guys about the new design of Halsey Street. I know the new apartments. I think so you guys aware they keep the parking in Halsey Street. I know the new designs and they want to have bicycles, but remember, twice a year, we have a big storms and icy in Troutdale. Halsey Street is very important because 257, so many times we cannot go up. And the freeway can be blocked every year with the trailers. That means Halsey is the only street we can use for go out and come back. One of the problems is the apartments up and down. The cars cannot go up and down. For 1 week or 2 weeks every year, all the tenants for those apartments needs to be parking their cars on the streets. If with the new design, take out the parking for Halsey, have a big problem every winter when the cars for the apartments cannot go up. I think so you guys are aware with the design, keep big parking in this area for the tenants of those apartments, because if they build 100 apartments, can be 50 cars needs to parking in the street, because the street is very steep to drive. I know because I deliver food and it's kind of complicated to go upstairs. That means be aware, keep parking in that part of the area. On the year we don't need, but in the winter, it's very important to keep parking over there. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
So, anyone else in council chambers who wishes to make public comment on non-agenda items at this time? I'll invite anyone joining us via Zoom to make public comment. I can't tell if anyone is interested, but call out your name or say yes.
Council President Whitmer, Paul Wilcox.
Okay, Paul, go right ahead.
Thank you, Councilor. Paul Wilcox, Troutdale. Last time I think I finished up with council vacancies. This week I'm going to address committee vacancies. So we'll get right to it. This is an issue I raised with the Citizens Advisory Committee at their meeting last week. Not so much for them to address, but to be aware of. Their chairperson had resigned entirely from the committee, so there was a vacancy in that position. Troutdale Municipal Code does not specifically address how a chairperson vacancy will be filled. That was the third chairperson resignation in the last year, 2 in PSEAC and 1 in CAC. During the first PSEAC vacancy, the vice chair called for an election of both chair and vice chair. In the second PSEAC chairperson vacancy, the vice chair automatically assumed the position of chair and a new vice chair was elected. This is an indication that the Troutdale Municipal Code, as written, provides inadequate guidance as to how to address committee chairperson vacancies. Another factor to take into consideration is the restriction that no one can be chairperson of more than 2 committees. On that basis, it might be advisable to not allow that person to be vice chair on any other committees, because they would be ineligible to assume a third chairperson position. It should also be made clear to anyone accepting a vice chair position that they could become the full-time chair at any time and would remain so until the end of the term. There's a difference between filling in occasionally and assuming the responsibility of chairperson for the balance of a term. While I'm on the subject of committee-related language in the TMC, I might as well address another aspect that I've been aware of for quite a while, and I've probably mentioned in the past. Under 2.20.020F, it states, quote, unless otherwise specified in the law or action creating the committee, a member's term on the committee shall expire on June 30th of the year the member's term has been designated to expire. If no qualified successor has been appointed as of that date, a member's term shall continue until the member's successor is appointed and qualified, unquote. If there is an insufficient number of applicants, this could result in someone's name being retained on the committee rolls who had no intention of continuing as a member, and could create a scenario where quorum could not be met to hold a meeting. By the way, staff in the CAC vice chair chose the model of having the vice chair assume the chair's position and electing a new chair. This is probably the preferable procedure, but I'd still like to see it spelled out more clearly in the code. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Paul. Anyone else on Zoom that wishes to make public comment at this time? And not seeing anyone else, we will close public comment and move on to item number 3, consent agenda. I don't know.
I'll read it.
Okay.
Consent agenda 3.1, resolution. The resolution approving a second short-term extension of the exclusive franchise agreement with Waste Management of Oregon.
I move adoption.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is adopted. Thank you. Great. Now we have a discussion, Gresham Fire Department burn ban and other suggested municipal code updates.
City Manager Young and Council, my name's Sean Durham. I'm the Gresham Fire Department Fire Marshal. I act as the Chief of the Life Safety Division. With me tonight is Assistant Chief Jeff Harrison and Lieutenant Brandon Baird. And Brandon is going to walk through the information we provided as far as the burn ban options and also the fire code changes. And then we'll be happy to answer questions.
Okay, thanks.
Good evening, council.
I don't think it's on, you gotta push the button. There you go.
As you stated, I'm a deputy fire marshal with the City of Gresham Fire Department. We're here today to make a recommendation to ban backyard burning and then adopt the current Oregon Fire Code, including our life safety inspection fees. The City of Troutdale currently allows backyard burning on any DEQ approved burn day. Unlawful burn restrictions were placed in local codes in 2007 to improve air quality and support a healthy living environment for our communities. These restrictions were not previously adopted by the City of Troutdale. The Gresham, Fairview, and Wood Village burn restrictions previously allowed 10 backyard burn days in the spring and 10 days in the fall, and was considered temporary, which would allow our citizens to adjust to recycling their yard debris. What would a ban mean? The backyard burn ban would mean that your citizens would need to resort to recycling their recyclable debris. All local garbage collectors offer debris recycling currently. For larger loads, we have public yard debris recycling businesses on Marine Drive. Residential properties with more than 1 acre can apply for an open burn permit. This will be reviewed prior to approval. Agricultural burn permits for farms and nurseries are still an option for those customers. Why is a ban needed? Our communities have become denser with new subdivisions, infill development, and smaller lot sizes. Smoke tends to settle in housing tracts, which causes respiratory and air quality concerns for some of our citizens. Backyard burning complaints have continued to increase in the last few years. GFD responded to 130 plus backyard burning complaints in the last year. Who would the ban affect? The ban will affect the citizens that still believe burning of the debris is the most efficient way to remove yard debris from their property. However, with a variety of recycling options available, the burden will be lessened. Who else has banned backyard burning? The cities of Gresham and Fairview have both banned backyard burning. Fairview will allow one more burn season in March of 2024. The proposed ban has been taken to the City of Wood Village. They are confident a burn ban will be approved by this next fall. Who would be responsible for enforcement? That would be Gresham Fire and the Environmental Quality, Department of Environmental Quality would both oversee the enforcement process. New Troutdale Municipal Code language for backyard burn ban. The Gresham Fire Department recommends new backyard burn ban language as shown herein. Proposed backyard burn ban municipal code language to be included in chapter 15.35.100, the Fire and Life Safety Code. Unlawful burning. No person may, A, no person may burn yard debris on or any type of material on any single or multi-family property within the City of Troutdale. B, burn at any time any man-made material, rubber, plastic, garbage, construction materials, petroleum-based materials, or any other product for which burning is prohibited by the Department of Environmental Quality. C, conduct any type of burning during a declared fire season. D, set on fire or cause to be set on fire any grass, grain, stubble, or other material being or growing on land within the city. E, intentionally or negligently allow fire to escape from the person's own land or land of which the person is in possession or control. F, accidentally set any fire on the person's own land or the land of another and allow it to escape from control without extinguishing it or using every reasonable effort to do so. G, know of a fire burning on the person's own land or land of which the person is in possession or control and fail or neglect to make every reasonable effort to extinguish it, regardless of whether or not the person is responsible for the starting or the existence of the fire.
So if I can stop there, City Manager Young and Council, just to explain, I've been working on a social media post in Gresham. So there's two different things here. There is backyard burning, which includes debris from the property. And then there's fireplaces and fire pits. Those are two completely separate items. Barbecues would be included with fireplaces and fire pits. So those are still allowed. So the only times those are not allowed is if there's a countywide burn ban or DEQ complaints. So someone is burning something noxious in their fire pit and neighbors are continuing to complain over and over again. So those are two separate things, just so everyone understands that.
So now we're going to go into kind of the second segment, the Troutdale Municipal Code, Oregon Fire Code adoption. The Troutdale Municipal Code has the 2007 Oregon Fire Code listed as the most current adoption in section 15.12.010. Gresham Fire Department recommends changing the language to reflect the most currently adopted Oregon Fire Code as included here. Current Troutdale Municipal Code language 15.12.010A for the purpose of governing conditions hazardous to life and property from fire, panic, or explosion. The city adopts the fire code known as the Oregon Fire Code OFC 2007 edition and the whole thereof, including the Oregon adoption appendices, except as amended in section 15.12.070 of this chapter and incorporated herein. The new proposed Troutdale Municipal Code language, the city adopts the Oregon Fire Code as set forth under OAR 837-040-001 through 837-040-0140. And as amended or revised by the state of Oregon, including adopted appendices, except as otherwise amended in sections 15.12.070 of this chapter and incorporated herein. Troutdale Municipal Code fee schedule adoption. Gresham, Fairview, and Wood Village adopted fees for fire and life safety inspections on or around the year of 2006. The city of Troutdale has not yet adopted a fee schedule, although the code language exists in section 15.12.070, section 108.1 as listed below. The jurisdiction shall establish the fees, if any, for initial business fire inspections, re-inspections, failure to abate hazards, and false alarms. The fees shall be set by resolution. Gresham Fire Department recommends adopting a fee schedule by resolution. The fees paid by the business owner are credited to the city of Troutdale's fire service contract, thus reducing the cost of the contract. And we provided an example of this the fee schedule. I can go over kind of that process. We initially issue a low hazard inspection fee for a business. We give them 30 days to comply with the violations that we note on the inspection. In that 30-day period, we would come back to the business, verify that they have complied with the requirements of the initial notice issued. If they haven't complied with those, we would issue a re-inspection. At that point, another 30 days would be provided for them to gain compliance. Again, come back, verify compliance. If they haven't, we would issue a second re-inspection, provide 30 days, and let them know that moving forward, if they do not comply with the requirements, we would issue a failure to abate. If you take a look at the fee schedule, that is escalated to an $825 fee. We feel like we give them substantial amount of time to comply, and we work with the business owners pretty vigorously to make sure that they are an understanding of what we're looking for and to accomplish.
So that kind of explains, thanks Brandon, what our recommendations are. Are there any questions for us at this time?
Yeah, I have a question. Just on the last thing you talked about really quick, sorry. How much per year would the fee schedule cost? What's the yearly amount that we pay currently?
So you don't pay anything specifically for fire inspections. It's the overall IGA fire service contract. So there's nothing else separated. The other cities have used this fee schedule. And then whatever we charge a business owner for an inspection or reinspection is then credited to what they're paying for their overall fire service contract. So there's nothing additional in Troutdale to what you're paying for your fire service contract currently.
Yeah,
Ray, go ahead.
Council President, if I could clarify, back in 2007, when we passed the Fire and Life Safety Code, we put in a number of places where there will be a fee to be set by council resolution for certain fire services like inspection services, but the council never passed a resolution setting the fees. An example would be under business license. It says business license inspections. Any person or business entity that applies for a license to conduct business in a physical location within the city of Troutdale must obtain a business license inspection by Gresham Fire. So you have to get an inspection and pay a fee for that inspection, comma, if established by council resolution. And we never established those fees. And as the chief explained, whatever fees that are collected would simply go to reduce our quarterly obligation to the city of Gresham for our fire service.
I guess, well, just to clarify on that, I see at the bottom of the Exhibit B that Fairview, Gresham, Wood Village have effective dates for their fee schedule, the ones they adopted, of 7/1/23, last July 1st. I don't recall that coming before us. Did we not consider it, or did we refuse, or?
No, I will say Sean has been encouraging me to bring it to council.
A proponent of.
So it's been sitting on my desk, and I've apologized to him for getting it to us. And then when the burn ban stuff came up last fall, I told him we just need to get all three of these on, because the third issue, of course, is our code was time warped back to 2007 fire code, and we didn't do any automatic updates to that code. So we need to at least say the fire code, not name the year of the fire code. So when all these issues came up, I said, let's just bring them all before council and decide.
Okay, all right. Jeffrey, did you have more?
I just wanted to I'm still confused. So who foots the bill for this currently? Or is it just?
We don't have any inspection fees in Troutdale. We have inspection fees in Gresham, Fairview, and Wood Village, but we don't have any inspection fees in Troutdale.
So currently, if someone wants this done, you just come and do it? And
yes.
you give a little salute to everybody?
Yes.
Okay, and if I may, it makes it extremely difficult to gain compliance when you don't have this aspect as an enforcement resource, right? So you do the inspection, you spend the time, there's no compensation, and then you come back and they still haven't done anything. You're utilizing, I've used a lot of time in the city of Troutdale and never gained compliance in some of these businesses because they know there is no fee for that, so.
Councilor Wittrin, you.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Were you done?
two questions. Backing up to the burn ban. Of the 130 complaints last year, do you have any idea how much of that was Troutdale?
We have not broke it down that way. We have a new data system you've probably heard about that's only about 1.5 years or so old, so I didn't break it down. We receive, more than the responses, is we receive a lot of complaints from neighbors. And sometimes that's because the people are burning stuff they're not supposed to. And this covers all of our cities, not just Troutdale. But sometimes it's just the, people's houses are quite often closer than they used to be. So we could look at that.
I'm just curious from a small town feel, once again, of Gresham of 110,000 people versus 17,000 people, and small town feel, we probably are a little more spaced out than Gresham, but trying to figure out what the constituents out there want and what feedback they're giving us out of that 130 complaints, that would have been good feedback. Question number 2, so then talking about the permit process for those people in 1 acre or bigger lots or nurseries or whoever could qualify to get the permit is still up to your discretion what would you say your approval percentage is for those who apply?
So ag and farm, pretty much all of them get approved as long as they.
High
So those all-
90%?
What was that?
High 90%?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
They have to follow, there are DEQ rules they have to follow. As far as the open burn for lots of 1 acre or less, we've had that available for the 20 years I've been here.
Mhm.
I bet we've had a handful apply. Now, since September, October, in Gresham, we've probably had 5 since then. Half of those, give or take, so we've had 5 or 6, never would have met the requirements. So even for backyard burning, the DEQ rules are that you must be 25 feet from anything combustible, trees, bushes, neighbors' fences, houses, shops. And half of those that I've looked at so far would have never met those requirements because they have large overhanging trees throughout their property, right up against the back of their house. So there's been a couple that have been denied, but I've taken that opportunity to talk about wildland mitigation and living in the wildland urban interface and things that they can do to make their house more fire safe with fire resistant plants and trimming trees. And so we use those opportunities, even if we have to deny a permit like that, to explain why and what they can do to provide their family a safer environment to live in. So
I'm sure there's a lot of education that can go with
there is. So I'm assuming that some of those may go up in the amount that we receive, but it's still early on to know how many. The thing that's different about Troutdale is there's never been a burn ban. They've always followed DEQ. So even with the number of complaints or responses, it's a little different than the other 3 cities, just in the fact that people in the other 3 cities know when it's burn day and know when it's not a burn day. So those complaints may be higher than Troutdale's at this point, to be completely honest. Because people know they're under different rules, under straight DEQ rules in Troutdale. So just to be fair.
Did you have more?
Well, I was more just like wanting to know, I realize that there's no financial impact to them now, and what you said makes sense. Do you have an idea of what the financial impact would be to the city by implementing a fee schedule, a roundabout number by chance?
I don't, just because we never have charged in Troutdale, so we don't have that data. We could try to look at the number of inspections. We're hoping to add a couple more inspectors due to workload over the next year, so that would be a better way to figure that out. But we could look at the last couple of years in Troutdale and the inspections that have been done, and then come up with a calculation, if that would help.
Okay.
Yeah, the other thing is I could offer is that I could ask Wood Village and Fairview to find out what they actually receive in terms of the credit on their fire contract. Okay. So that would be another number to know, that we could know relative terms and extrapolate out what that might be for a Troutdale.
And then is there, in the permit process, is there any exemptions made for like a type of business? Or I just saw that there's like seasonal Christmas tree sales. So like, you know, if the Boy Scouts are out and they want to sell Christmas trees, is there like a waiver or like a nonprofit?
Depends on their business. If it's a business that does not create or make income, then we usually they have to fill out a form, and then we typically waive those for Boy Scouts, for Girl Scouts, any of those type of businesses, just like a lot of other cities and businesses do for those type of organizations. So yes, there is.
Okay, thank you.
And if I may too,
Yeah.
sorry, if I was to go out and do a fire inspection
Yeah.
initial, wrote up 5 violations, I came back for that re-inspection and they had completed everything and
Yep.
passed the re-inspection with flying colors.
Yeah.
There's that opportunity. I wouldn't charge for that reinspection fee at that point too.
Okay.
So that's a possibility as well.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Sandy, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. On the fee schedule where it's like ultra low hazard, is this only for business or would this include residential as well?
So we don't do any residential inspections. If you're talking about the open burn permit that we discussed, that's in a separate area.
Okay, and what about the excessive false fire alarms?
So that's been in place since the mid to late 90s. If they receive 3 false alarms in a row, then we send a letter with information that they have to have a contractor come repair it, and there is a fee for that. Now, if we respond and determine maybe they've had 2 in a row, and the third one is maybe they had a contractor in there that was sanding the floor and that caused a smoke detector to go off, so the system was working as it should, then we code it different in our system, and then there's a reset, and so they get 3 in a row after that. So there are some exceptions in there on what type of false alarm we responded to.
Okay, and thank you. And my last question is this for Troutdale service area or Troutdale city limits only? Because we have some area that would just be Multnomah County that's adjacent or even inside city limits, but it all gets services.
So if it's unincorporated Multnomah County, then that would not cover that area per se. It would cover businesses in the city of Troutdale. Like for instance, Gresham is contracted for Fire District 10 in South and East unincorporated Multnomah County. We do not, we strictly follow the fire code for new construction in those areas. It's just now starting to grow. And so we've been working with them to make sure they have a current fire code adopted too. So it would be similar to that. Inspections would typically be in city limits.
Thank you.
Yep.
Glenn?
Sure. Well, Battalion Chief Durham, thank you and your team. I appreciate the work you guys do. Just so for the record, I'm Troutdale's representative for the Fire User Board. And I called the burn line to see because I know we're in that season. And I know they have to wait for the right conditions. I'm fine with that. Troutdale, last time this was brought up was about 9 years ago. And the public came out in droves against it. And I was really proud of the fact that Troutdale thought we didn't have to put up with the 10 days in the spring and the 10 days in the fall like the other cities were doing. And because, to me, it's a property right. I used to live in an apartment. I couldn't work on my car or do anything. And it kind of motivated me to get my own property. And, but the reason for bringing all that up is I asked Chief Lewis, are you guys planning on doing a burn ban in Troutdale? And he said no. And that was at our very last Fire User Board meeting just a few weeks ago. So is he aware of this? Absolutely.
When you asked him about a burn ban, was he maybe thinking a countywide burn ban?
No, I was specific when I talked about, because I brought up the example of me calling in. And that's when I found out that Gresham could no longer burn and Fairview, and now it looks like possibly Wood Village. But, so it's kind of a surprise that you're here. And, Gresham, the fire department has a much greater problem, which is response times. And I know that because I'm on the Fire User Board. And our contract's up. We're renegotiating a new contract. So it really isn't prudent for us to start cutting services or adding fees when there's only a year left on this contract. And it really ruins our negotiation stance. So the timing, I think, is poor. But, you know, we brag about our small town feel, and I'll give you an example of that. The smelter in the Sandy River right now. And on my property, I live on the Sandy River, I rent the cement nets out. And one of the things I like to do is I get a bonfire going in case because it's happened where someone's fallen in the river. And also people can gather around and have a cup of coffee and warm themselves because it's a cold sport this time of year. And, you know, the rules to have a fire are, it has to be 25 feet from your neighbor's property line. It can only be six foot diameter and 3 feet tall. You have to have a garden hose, and the person has to stay inside of the fire the entire time. And Troutdale has a stellar record for safety. We don't have a problem with people doing that activity currently. And on your Exhibit A, it has this list of what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 items. All of them are currently illegal, except for we're allowed to burn. So all the language about burning plastic and rubber and stuff like that is already in effect.
Yeah, that's from your code.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I just thought I'd point that out. So really the only change is that we will, since statehood till now, we're being asked to not burn anymore. And I don't think our community is going to be very happy with that, especially when, you know, you go to 1,000 acres for the Sandy Delta property, and there's a huge homeless community out there that burns year round, and they're burning garbage and they're burning tires. We can see the black smoke. And, you know, the thing to do is when you get a complaint, you just say, well, today's a legal burn day. If they're not burning tires or garbage or pressure treated lumber, you know, explain that to the people that'll call, and they'll stop calling. And as far as air quality, you obviously haven't been in Troutdale very long because the wind doesn't linger. The smoke won't linger in Troutdale for very long. You know, we're a windy city. And anyway, and then as far as, I've got a bunch more. I'll just go through them. You know, we're Tree City USA. I'm worried about people cutting trees down instead of, if they lose that ability to burn brush. And for older people, you're asking a big task. You have to have a truck or a trailer. You have to be able to lift those limbs into a vehicle. You're going to give Waste Management and Metro monopoly on yard debris. So I think the price would go way up. Troutdale isn't a homeowners association. We still believe in property rights out here. Bigger polluters are high-rise buildings and cars. And then there's nothing being done about those. And I expect there is a way to do that. Our layout, we're near build out, so we haven't densified other than we have apartments going in, but to my knowledge, no apartment is allowed to have anything other than a barbecue. They may not even be allowed to do that. But I appreciate you guys that you hate fire. I understand that. It's your job to keep us safe. So don't take offense to this. I'm just going to continue though. I've covered most of them. I'll make sure I didn't miss any. Small town. Okay. Oh yeah, no. Now, if I'm not allowed to burn, I'm gonna use my wood chipper, which is gonna add noise and still the air quality problem, because it'll take, instead of, I burn my pile once a year. I use the ash for my garden, so I make sure I'm not burning any garbage or any dimensional lumber, because I know that causes higher particulates and also a higher temperature for the fire. Because I want to use it for my fruit trees and garden, and it's a great benefit to the soil. I don't want to have to start buying ash bags at Home Depot. But and then as far as the business fees, you know, our restaurants are struggling out here, and our businesses in general are. They're trying to make a comeback, and the last thing I want to do, especially when we're about to renegotiate a new contract, is to add this fee schedule. So thank you for listening. Again, I appreciate the work you do. I love working with Chief Lewis, and I know the fire, we pay you guys a lot of money for fire protection, and this is part of what we want you guys to do. And also, there's very few fires in Troutdale. You know, I know the town's burned down way in our history, it's burned down twice on Hungry Hill. But with modern construction and these kind of rules, safe rules for outdoor burning, and we have a code enforcement person too, that can help you guys if someone calls in about smells like garbage burning. That's a different story, and I'm fine with you guys enforcing that. So that's all I have. Do you have any questions of me?
Yeah, Councilor White. So to back up, yes, Chief Lewis was aware, was in the loop, was part of this discussion. So I'm guessing there may have been some confusion when asked that question. That I won't speak for him. I just know Chief Lewis, and I'm sure there must have been some confusion. So I apologize for that.
Well, he was just here and gave us an update and did not mention the burn ban at all to us. So I'm just curious about that too.
Yeah, as far as the rest of it, I understand your opinion. I appreciate you speaking your mind. Anyone else have any questions for us?
No, go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
I just have another, on the fee schedule, is there any other cities in the state of Oregon that don't have fees associated with their inspections that you know of?
I'm sure there are others. I mean, I don't know off the top of my head as far as fire departments. A lot of them in the metro area have fees associated with inspections, event inspections. A lot of them are calculated on square footage of the business instead of a flat fee. And when I originally reworked this 10 years ago, a lot of our buildings would have cost a lot more to inspect if we went by square footage. So that's why we stayed with our original fees were in place from 2006 to 2021 with no change in the inspection fees. And so finally we did an update and then set a reoccurring percentage so that they would move upward rather slowly, but they will move upward. So hopefully that helps. I can't name any off the top of my head that don't in this area, but there probably could be some.
Thanks.
Now, you, there's the issue, there's the burn ban and the fee schedule. Was there something else you needed to have changed in our code?
The fire code, the currently adopted fire code states the 2007 version, and we're at the 2022 version. And so the language, we recommended the language change to not include the code year, to include the Oregon administrative rule that talks about adopting the most current edition, so that we don't have to come back every 3 years, or you don't have to re-adopt the code to change, because there's been a lot of change from the 2007 fire code to the 2022 fire code.
I understand. That seems pretty straightforward. Anything else? Before I open it to public comment, because it's gonna be a little confusing if we get too many topics floating on this one item.
That was all we had.
All right, well, very good. I think what I'll do is invite public comment at this time.
Okay.
Unless anybody else on council has a comment, we'll listen to the public next. So I'll start off, and
Yeah, go ahead.
we'll let
Thank you.
people come up, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chief and Deputy, and I'll open it to the public in the room here. If there's anybody in the public that wishes to address the council on this item, which is a discussion of the changes in the fire code. Yes, Bruce.
Mr. Council President, just to make sure, maybe ask people, make sure, what issue they're commenting on? Is it the backyard burn? Is it the fee schedule? Or is it just the general update of the code, just so we can track the topic?
All right, we'll try to make that clear.
Bruce Watson, I've lived here for 43 years and I've seen a lot of things go on in this town. This is one of those things I think ought to be voted out and resoundingly voted out. This amounts to a tax on business owners because a fee, quote unquote, is still something you pay out of your pocket. They call them fees, but they're actually taxes. The other thing is the burn ban. I mean, most houses couldn't sustain a backyard burn, even my own backyard. If it's 25 feet from any building or anything to catch fire, I'd have a fire about the size of a coffee can because my house, my backyard does not support that. Now, I think this is an intrusion into the property rights of everybody in this city. And property rights are one of the things that this country was founded on. And I don't see anything in here that can't be covered by current law with the exception of the burn ban. And I don't want someone coming in and telling me I can't do something on my own property. That's why I bought it. I mean, I've done improvements inside the house, and I too tend to do improvements outside the house, but I am not going to put up with this kind of a thing. Now, they said that you could get a recycle permit. Well, why should you have to get a permit to recycle something? That's another tax. Anytime you pay the government money for anything, it's a tax. Pure and simple tax. And the fees for the inspection, I don't know what they're going to be, but would that actually make these business owners do what they're supposed to do? Can't you get the health inspector in there and say, okay, you have problems here. Take care of them. Whether they're fire safety related or not, I don't know, but some of them won't be. Because you got cooking utensils and things like that in there. This amounts also to a fine if you're doing that. That you're fining these people for not doing something. Well, okay, you can try to coerce them, but that's not going to work, I think, in a lot of cases. But I agree with Glenn's approach to this thing. This whole thing is just ridiculous on the face of it. I mean, I'm all for safety, but it's not gonna make anybody more safe. How many fires have there been caused in the city of Troutdale by backyard burning? In 43 years, I've seen none. This is just another government intrusion into people's lives. It's something we do not need and should not have. And I am vehemently opposed to this. I don't want to follow Portland and Troutdale or Gresham and all the rest of these cities and being run by somebody outside this city. I didn't move here because I like the east wind. I moved here because it was a good place to live, and I've stayed. And the reason I stayed is because we don't have a lot of intrusion from the city government. And I think that's paramount. The Fourth Amendment of the Constitution of the United States and the amendments in the state of Oregon's Constitution say that we, our property owners, have the right of security in our papers and property. That means you can't have the government walking in anytime they decide they don't like what you're doing. I mean, I live 2 blocks from the fire department down there, and I appreciate having them there. But I don't want someone coming into my property and saying you can or cannot do this. The DEQ is bad enough, but I will abide by what the DEQ and the county says when it comes to backyard burning, if I have a spot to do it. But other than that, take a hike, get the government out of my property and off my property. That's all I've got. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bruce.
Thanks, Bruce.
Is there anyone else who wishes to address the council? Please come forward, state your name and the city where you reside.
My name's Sherry Winters. I'm on both public safety and the parks advisory committees, but I'm not coming here today as that. I completely agree. Yes, I completely agree with Councilman White. But I wrote something out, I'm going to say it, and hopefully it flows out okay. So let's see. So my name's Sherry Winters, and I'm here today as a concerned citizen and 30-year homeowner in Troutdale. I'm asking that the council would continue to allow burning. In my 30 years of living in Troutdale, almost every year I have burned multiple times during the times I've been allowed to burn. It allows me to mitigate fire danger around my house. I fought wildland forest fires for 3 summers in the late 80s and am a responsible person. I have never had an issue with a fire. Although I do recycle some yard debris, I cannot keep up with the volume that ends up in my yard. On 3 sides of my property, there are arborvitae. One side is about 25 feet tall and over 100 feet long, probably at least 4 feet deep. The other 2 sides, at least 50 feet long each, but not quite as tall. And they all belong to the neighbors. And they are not taken care of. This means that there's a huge amount of stuff that falls into my yard. And when the wind blows, it's even worse. And with the east wind here in Troutdale, there's also plenty that blows down the street and seems to collect in the gutter strip of the street in front of my house. I could fill a can nearly once a week with what comes into my yard that is not from my yard. So telling me that I should check with the garbage hauler for my recycling bins to be increased in size and pay more, that just doesn't seem right. It's not my yard debris. So we talk about fire awareness and mitigating fire danger around one's house. I believe I can best mitigate this fire danger near my house if I'm allowed to burn. Yes, I burn in a burn barrel. I burn safely. And it would be a hardship to me if a ban is implemented. I don't have a trailer or a truck to take things away in. It seems to me that every day the government inserts itself into our lives more and more and takes away more of our freedoms. Just because you might not burn at your house doesn't mean you should say yes to a ban. You never know when a situation may change. Right here, Exhibit A, number 1, when it says burn yard debris or any type of material, that's anything. That's when you're having a little fire in your fireplace out back and somebody says, oh no, that's not included. Yeah, bad writing there. Okay, and so I'd say one by one, the freedoms keep being snatched. What will be next? No fires for roasting marshmallows when the grandkids come over? Don't be fooled. That will be what happens next if you say yes to this ban. And I might just add, in hearing what I heard too tonight, there's plenty of times when I could have burned probably even more safely with less impact on any neighbors from smoke if I was allowed to burn at times other than what DEQ allows me to burn at. Burning was supposed to start on March 1st, however, it hasn't started. And there's some days I could have burned and gotten rid of a heap load of yard debris, but I can't because it hasn't been allowed, and I do follow the rules. And if anyone cares to see the pictures of the arborvitae that's around me, I have them on my phone. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Sherry.
you.
By the way, Council President, I am keeping track of time. She was 4.5 minutes, so she was good.
Everybody's sticking with the rules. Ryan, come on up.
It's been a long time, some familiar faces, a few new ones. I'm Ryan McNaughton. I'm fourth generation Troutdalean. Been involved with the city quite a bit. I've lived currently at the address on Cherry Park for 14 years. That property's been in my family for over 100 years, and they've burned every year for 100 years. I've done it since I was a kid, every spring, every fall. We have giant trees back there. You probably know the property. You can't drive past Cherry Park without seeing the 200-foot Douglas firs. If I'm not able to burn, I don't think I can get through all the debris that it drops back there. And if that dries out, it'd be a huge fire hazard. It's a fuels reduction for us every year. And yes, they've called the fire department. They've came out, they've seen my hose. They said, okay, well, let the neighbor know. It's usually the same neighbor. But since 2 years ago when they did come out, they haven't called. And so I do fit that over 1 acre threshold, but I don't put much faith in any permits from any government agency. It typically takes forever. And something like this, I would think that it probably would be denied. So I would think, I would ask how much air pollution comes from a backyard burn. What's the carbon emissions on that? Is there embedded cost? How much carbon emissions are coming from me getting 2 40-yard dumpsters and trying to fill those up in the amount of time that they have them allotted, and the steel and the diesel that goes into building those. And I've planted over 1,000 trees in my life. I just planted 67 trees in my backyard, probably enough to take care of all of the burns for the next 20 years if it's an emissions thing. The safety thing I get, right? It can be dangerous, but in 100 years and 70 years and the 35 years I've been burning there, we've never had any issue. And those trees are 200 feet tall. If that's allowed to dry out, it's fireworks, and common sense ain't common anymore, but if you're following the rules that are in place, there's no issue that you should have an issue with the backyard burn. It's just not. And HOAs were brought up. If you're living in an HOA, you probably aren't going to burn in the HOA anyway. I don't live in an HOA. I'm sorry, but I have one right next door. And then real quickly on the fees, being a property owner that has a restaurant that leases from us, we had to rebuild that building. Fire department actually saved the building. When we were going through that process, there was a lot of inspections that held it up from getting open. There was no fees, but we could not open until the process was over, until they met the thing. So I don't think a fee would have sped that up. I don't think if you're getting charged, you're going to do it any faster. I mean, they couldn't. Until they had that process and they were checked off on the permits, they weren't allowed to open. I get that, it costs a lot of money and they want to get some money out of that, but maybe one-time fee, I can't see them having to charge every time they re-inspect, because that could just get into the discretion of maybe you have a different inspector that comes and has a different view on it. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks. Anyone else? Please. Well, all right, a race.
Shelby Stephenson, a Troutdale resident. Good evening, counselors. So I'm not going to reiterate, but I agree with all of them, people. I really want to see us be able to do backyard burning. We always have been able to burn, and that's how we get rid of. I wish we could burn before March 1st, like sometimes when there's some nice days in February, January. I don't like having to wait when there might be more people out, but I just want to be able to burn. And then the other thing is, I'm not in favor of costing businesses with fees for inspections. I kind of think it's not a good idea. So that's it.
Thank
you,
you,
Shelby.
Well, all right, please. I'll get you next. Well, hang on. So
Bob or Robert Ice. And been here for 30 years, and we're down in Jackson Park, little area there. There's one thing that Troutdale's known for, and that's the wind. And every year, nature comes through and prunes all the trees. If you happen to live on a home that has a lot of trees, you get a lot of debris. In our case, right now, there's probably the equivalent of many dump trucks of debris that are out there that we've been gradually gathering up. And it would normally be that we would just burn that off over the course of maybe several burners in the spring. And it's super convenient on the one hand. I understand, and I don't know if this is true, I'm sure the fire department knows, one of our neighbors was concerned and called on what the cost of a Gresham permit was. He was told $159 just for the permit. And then, of course, you still have to go through all the rigmarole. But in any case, we, on that street, for example, one side of the street has a park. It's a city park all along there. That we take that debris that falls down through there, and we bring it over and burn it as part of our normal process. If I had to cart it off, or have it carted off at my expense, that's not going to happen. So the city would have to do it. So there's just, it's just what you're proposing. If we had a continuing problem, we had a lot of fires, but to my understanding, we haven't had any fires due to this thing that we're trying to change. And so I'm not sure what the benefit would be as far as air pollution. It's one of the beauties of where we live. It's pretty much taken care of for us. And so we just have a tremendous amount of material that comes down every year. It's not something, I couldn't even consider. Our area right now has filled this room. That's not something I can stick in a trash can and call Metro to take care of. It would require bringing in trucks. It would be very expensive. So those are my concerns.
Thank you, Robert.
Thanks. Yes, sir, please come forward.
My name's Stafford Winters. I'm a 33-year resident of Troutdale. I have burned some of those years. In all of the times I've burned, I have used a burn barrel. I feel that it's safer because, property is not as wide open, but I could have, if I wanted to sacrifice a larger space in my property, kind of left a burn mark, I could certainly do that. I have had the fire department come by a number of times because a neighbor complained, and I think every time it was because the neighbor said I was burning garbage, which I was not. It was yard debris. So it was probably someone who was a newer neighbor, wherever they were at, and was not happy with the fact that there was some smoke. I actually have a new neighbor, and I found out that that neighbor has some lung problems. So I have chosen not to burn because I want to be considerate of my neighbor. But I don't want to say that other people shouldn't burn. I think it's their property. They should have the right to burn. They chose that. There's no reason that we should change laws and penalize people who have purchased property in an area where they could burn, just to tell them, oh, go move somewhere else where you don't have to burn. And I would like to make one note that I have a coworker who lives in Oregon City, and he has told me he burns, except during the summer, he burns throughout the year and has no problem with that and does not pay any fees or apply for anything. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you.
All right, so please.
Good night, my name is Saul Pompeyo, and I'm the owner of Restaurante Pompeyo. And I got to talk a little bit about how is the inspection system when you are a business. Every year, you pay insurance, I pay insurance, and I pay the inspection for my building. They come for the insurance, and they check everything. And we have a inspection. After it, the hood maintenance comes, the suppression system, and they check all the system, and we pay for the inspection. After it, the cleaning system comes and clean the hood twice a year or 3 times per year, and they do the inspection, and we have a report. And all the reports we send to the Gresham Fire Department. And after it, the alarm system, that's once a year. They come, they check everything. If there's something wrong in the maintenance, they fix it. After the fixing, they do the report, and they do the inspection, and they send to the Gresham Fire Department. We have plenty inspections, 4 or 5 inspections for the building a year, and that is the system. I don't know if it's necessary to have another inspection. If we already have, when it's the maintenance people, they do a report for inspections. And we have another inspection, and they cost another $400. The nice thing with the maintenance people, if something is wrong, they go, they fix it, they charge for the fixing, of course, and they go to the report, but we don't need to pay re-inspect because it's the same guy go fixing. Sometimes one of the nose is broken or something happened, or we need to replace like the batteries. I think so every 4 or 5 years, we need to replace the batteries. Well, that is the maintenance people do the inspections and send the reports to the Gresham Fire Department. That is my thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Saul.
Okay. Anyone else in the room? Please come forward. Kenny?
Good evening, Council President Rittman and Council. Kenny Stephenson, Troutdale resident. One question I had for you is when would the ban go into effect? I didn't hear that.
Well, we don't have, this is a discussion item. So I don't know. It would depend on what we had ended up adopting.
Like now?
It sounds like,
a year
for instance,
from
Fairview, from what I heard, Fairview put it off till next year for effectiveness. We could, I think it's within our discretion to decide, does it, please go on.
Well, that was my first question. And my other question would be, was there public outreach? Do we engage CAC or a community group or someone to get their input and get some feedback from the little people?
I don't know. What's there?
Other than our normal public notice of topics for the meeting, no.
Anyway, good question.
And then the other thing, this is coming at us a year after a major ice storm. I don't know about your place, but I got a lot of shrapnel still all over the place. And I'll just say this, I mean, as bad as Gresham is at a lot of things, even they gave their people a year notice that it was coming. And one thing it does do is it gives you a chance to get somebody out to limb the trees up and do some other things. So if we were going to make any type of adjustments, I would say we should be giving our people some notice. That would only seem reasonable and fair. When I come here and talk to you guys, I really don't try to be self-serving, believe it or not. And I try to think about the 16,000 residents of Troutdale and what's best for them. But tonight, I've got to really take a little different approach, which is a little more self-serving, because I live on the east side of the river, and there's like 35 of us that live over there. And the parcels over there range from like half an acre up to about 16 acres. So these are larger pieces of land. And my property is almost 2 acres, and I've been burning there for 55 years. Got a lot of trees. I've got trees that are over 120 years old and many trees that are over 125 feet tall. And a recycle bin from a national conglomerate isn't an option that is really going to work for me or a lot of other people. First, I don't know that they've got a size that's going to work. Second, even if they did, I don't think I could afford it. And I don't think a lot of others could either. And really, you know, where this is kind of going, like, if you look at me, I'm in the National Scenic Area, and I replaced a dilapidated shed a while back. And I took out a 30-foot tree, and the Gorge Commission had me plant 18 trees in place of it. There's a lot of stuff that comes off of 18 trees, considering the trees that you already got and then the 18 that you've got now. So it's like, what are we supposed to do with the debris? The little yard container doesn't work. And I fill a truck up every year with stuff that I don't burn, haul it down, and, you know, do the recycle thing. So I start wondering, is it like, what do I do? The old trees that I have, do I cut those down? So there's no more limbs coming off of them, no more issues with them? And what's that gonna do for air quality at the end of the day? And so it's a little confusing of how we got here, why we got here. Now, I'm also in a unique situation because I'm close to the Corbett Fire District, which is about 200 feet from me. They managed to make this thing work. I know it's a different model and all that, but you can burn. And we come 200 feet this way, you can't burn. So I'm really just trying to figure some of this out. And again, I think public engagement would help at any level. If we need to modify something, I think we should talk about that and do it. Just coming down with this, you know, this is how it is, I think is really hard. And I think we should consider it. And do we have a solution looking for a problem? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danny.
Anyone else in the room? I'll inquire on, was there a hand? Did I miss somebody? I'll inquire in Zoom land, and if someone in the room wants to make a comment before I close it out, I'll open it up again. Anyone on Zoom who wishes to address the council on this, this is a discussion item.
Rich Allen here.
All right, Rich, go forward.
All right. So Rich Allen, Troutdale. For Troutdale, the data doesn't seem to point to a burn ban actually being a fire concern for our city. This seems more like more of a political concern. One might perhaps say a political concern looking, or should I say a political solution, looking for a problem. So yeah, I'm not in favor of what I've heard so far. That was it.
All right, thanks, Rich. Anyone else on Zoom? All right, not seeing anyone. Call out if anyone changed their mind in the room. Other than that, I'll close public comment on this item. This is a discussion item. And, Chief Durham, you're hearing it's a tough sell in Troutdale, but I appreciate your coming. I'll just say for myself, because I haven't really, I've lived over 30 years in Troutdale, and I've always been against the burn ban. This has been proposed before. And I don't think anything's really changed. I do live on a several acre lot and have an enormous burn pile that is ready to go. That is more than 25 feet from anything. And I would be horribly disappointed if I had to put it all in recycle. Anyway, we've heard the arguments, and we'll take it under advisement. But Chief, do you want to address us one more time?
That's also
Ray?
suggest maybe he gets a chance. to
Yeah, do you want to
rebuttal.
answer some of the questions, or you've heard what people said? I guess I'll also say, as far as the inspection fees, we're in the midst of thinking of renegotiating and entering a new contract with Gresham. And if adopting a fee schedule looked like a good deal for Troutdale as part of the negotiations, I could be sympathetic. In general, I'm hearing most people are not sympathetic to it, and I would share that view for adopting anything right now on that. That's my just personal opinion.
Yeah, I'd be happy to address that. I think there's some confusion about inspection. So there were a couple people talking about new construction. So building permits, I believe, was something that was being mentioned. We are talking about the Oregon Fire Code annual fire safety inspections. That's different than new construction inspections. Those are covered through your building permit center. So a couple different things we're talking about. So your current code already has that up to one fire inspection per year can be conducted for a commercial business. So that's already in your code. The fee schedule is what hasn't been adopted. So hopefully that explains a couple things there. So we're talking about going into a business, doing a fire safety inspection. There was mention of a restaurant owner and having people look at their sprinklers and alarms. We're looking at life safety hazards. So we're looking at exiting, how people in that establishment can get out, if there's lighting for them to get out, if their doors are wide enough to get out, if their door hardware is correct, if their exit doors from stairways are not blocked. So we're looking at those type of things, along with the occupancy type, the number of people that were originally approved. So I think what was being referred to there is with a fire protection system, fire sprinklers, fire alarms, kitchen hood suppression system, those are required by a national code to be tested. And then those are supposed to be sent to your local fire department. So any of those fire protection systems are required to be tested. So we do a fire safety inspection. We look at those reports to make sure they've been tested like they should. So hopefully that explains a little bit of the difference in, I think there may have been some confusion as to what our annual life safety fire inspections are. As far as setbacks to side yards, that is not a Gresham fire specific rule. That is DEQ that sets that rule. So whether you do anything with what we brought forward, that is already set in place by DEQ for setbacks. Just so everybody's clear, that's not something from us, that's something from the Department of Environmental Quality. As far as the rest of it, I think we did what we could to explain. We did this same burn ban in Gresham, we took the same one to Fairview, took the same one to Wood Village. So you guys were next on the list to bring this to and share the information, make our proposal, and then let you, as the city council, make the decision. So I think we've done what we can as far as explaining, trying to give our perspective, and make sure that you know from us, we are fair throughout our response area. So this is not something that we're only taking to Troutdale.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, we appreciate the time.
Care to,
Anyway,
yes,
Keep it down, Chief
Sandy,
Brown.
you have something? Please, go ahead.
I'm trying to understand, does the DEQ take precedence even in Troutdale, or do the Troutdale, I mean, are there really only 10 days in the spring and 10 days in the fall that people can burn?
So that was adopted by Gresham, Fairview, and Wood Village. Troutdale falls under DEQ because there's nothing in your current code as far as any requirements for backyard burning. So you guys call our line and we provide what the DEQ burn day is for that day. Because you currently fall under DEQ rules. Does that explain it?
So the 10 days is separate from whether or not DEQ allows to burn.
The 10 days in the spring and fall was Gresham, Wood Village, and Fairview as a special exception that was put in place in 2006 so that what they did originally, and that was what they did was they took it to Gresham City Council and then they decided to try to take a slower approach to banning all backyard burning. So they allowed the 10 in the spring and 10 in the fall as an exception. Troutdale currently does not have any language, so you guys fall under DEQ currently.
Okay.
Yeah, if I could add to that, Council
Yes,
President. Yeah, we're all subject to DEQ regardless. The restrictions that the other cities have enacted, you can do more restrictions than DEQ allows, you just can't allow more than DEQ. And currently DEQ gets to decide when Troutdale gets to burn. And I don't know, generally, Chief, do you know how many days a year do they generally allow under a general?
Yeah, they usually start in March and end in October. It depends on the wind, obviously, the air quality, they take all those things into consideration. I do not honestly know the number of days that you guys are allowed to burn.
Yeah, for the purposes of the council, there's actually a mapping tool on DEQ's website that can tell you when you can burn or not burn, is what we're currently covered by.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. If there's nothing else, thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate the time.
Thank you. I don't know if staff is expecting us to give direction tonight. It was a discussion, but yes.
The comments I have, I'm not gonna touch the backyard burning. That's a policy issue between the fire department and the elected officials of the city. I just wanted to make some comments on the fee schedule. I just want to make clear that any fees paid do not benefit the Gresham Fire Department. Any fees paid go to the Troutdale General Fund essentially and pay down our obligation to the Gresham Fire under our current contract. So whether it's renewed next year or not, it helps the city's general fund this year or next year. Second of all, that means that currently the general fund subsidizes all these inspections that happen. The general fund pays for it. All citizens pay for every business to get inspected because we are paying more because we're not collecting any fees for it. And so these fees represent a cost for the service. And so when someone needs a service, they pay for it. So that saves the citizens from having to pay for something they don't benefit from. The other part of the fees, which is a smaller part of it, is enforcement fees. Currently, if someone has too many fire alarms, like they don't care to fix their fire alarm system and the trucks roll every time it goes off falsely, we don't have a fine for that. And so people can abuse that. There's also an issue with abatement. If the fire department comes and says, hey, you got a real fire danger here, you need to abate it and fix it, there's no fine that we can impose to make them fix the fire danger that puts everybody at risk. There's a fire watch fee on here. If someone has an event that they don't have the proper fire equipment, it's an interesting process, but you can actually have the fire department send a couple people out to watch to make sure a fire doesn't happen. And on something like that, I don't think the citizens should be subsidizing. That's a special event that somebody needs a fire watch for. So there's certain things on this fire list that I think are important that we should look seriously at having fees on. And then the other one's a policy decision as to whether the general fund should just subsidize our businesses and our restaurants and such. And we just pay for these fees by not getting it back or not. So that's kind of the question for the council to kind of answer on that one. And the third one is, of course, is updating our code to the current fire code. I think that's something that we should do because we are living with the 2007 code and we probably should update it.
Yeah, that was my question, was gonna be, of this fee schedule, could we elect
to choose which things we charge for and then get rid of the
I
other
asked the
things?
chief if he thinks that's a problem or not.
So we've tried to make everything the same in all the cities just because it's easier, because we do the billing. We, meaning the city of Gresham, does the billing and then credits your fire service contract is how it works. For someone to, we have a lot of businesses like mobile vendors, people that kind of move around East County. And if they pay in one city and they don't pay in the other city, it gets very confusing, but ultimately that's up to you. It is the same in the others, but it took us a while to get there.
Anyone else? Glenn?
I think if we're gonna pick up that fee schedule, that we should start with our Public Safety Advisory Committee and go through the citizen panel first. And I also wouldn't recommend doing it right as we're in the middle of renegotiating the contract, because right now it's being covered by commercial businesses' property taxes out of the general fund. And I just think it weakens our stance on negotiating a new contract. Just bad timing is all.
Well, I concur that now is when we extend the contract or do a new contract, this could be part of it, adopting a fee schedule. And it would relate to the amount people are paying. I personally not ready to just go forward with it right now. Jordan, do you have a comment? You don't have to. Sandy?
Yeah, actually, I have a quick comment. Is there any reason we can't just go ahead and update from 2007 to 2022 and then leave the fee schedule and burn questions for a later time?
That's the easy one, Sandy. You weren't asking me, but that one we should do that.
We just need to come back, it's an ordinance change, we just
Yeah.
need to come back with a
Come back
first reading,
with
second reading, so.
That one is not.
What I'm hearing
not
is you wanna
objective.
mull over 1 and 2 and go ahead and bring back the ordinance change for updating our code.
All right, I mean, I
That's
would
what staff-
concur with that, agree with that.
Yeah,
Just do the ordinance change.
You know, there's been no fees paid up until this point, so there's no reason to rush into it. And I have to,
Yeah.
as I get more used to this, like,
the
I
contracts is the
agree
biggest
with
thing.
Glenn. Yeah, well, and that, I think, you know, a good way to do it to start is to take it to whatever committee would be appropriate for it to go to talk about what of those do they like. And I think we should move forward with that, so we have an idea of what fees are important to our city, to our people, that they feel like is appropriate. So we can, if it happens to come into the contract at some point, like we already are armed with that in our back
I
pocket.
think that's a good idea.
Yes, I would, for instance, the fee schedule, I would favor referring it to the public safety delivery group.
Can you clarify which group?
I think in
Public
safety and
Safety
equity.
Services Delivery Working Group.
Oh, the working group. Okay.
Oh, that's a good question.
Not PSAC, but the working
Oh,
group.
PSAC is what you said. But I was thinking that they're the ones considering renewing the
I'd be
contract.
okay with that, that's a good
Yeah,
idea.
that seems like it fits.
The only objection I will raise to defend the 2 council members here who are on the Public Safety Delivery Working Group is that we got a lot of work to do, figure out what we need for fire service in this city in the future. I would suggest maybe the Public Safety and Equity Group might be better, because that's a standing committee. The other one's a temporary committee.
But we need to find more, the public's feeling on it more than anything else, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, and so we can do public
That's
notices on that one too.
Yeah.
So it's up to you. I'm looking at the public safety.
I feel like PSAC would be more the one.
You used to serve on that committee, so
Yeah, I
I'll
used
take
to
your.
chair that one as well, but I think PSAC would be a little.
I agree.
Okay.
And we have the
I
chair
would
of the
agree.
PSAC here also, so.
I would agree.
I mean, is it okay to send the burn ban question to them also? Just to like, I don't know if that's appropriate or not, to be honest with you.
That
I
might
say
go
we
to the
table it
CAC.
indefinitely.
Actually, the burn ban, I don't even want to
Let's
refer.
let's pump the brakes till we get a full council probably and discuss that.
Yeah,
some other time.
I don't necessarily want to refer
Can we
that.
discuss
for-
that at a later time then?
Yeah.
Is that-
We can discuss it anytime
I
we
li-
want.
Okay,
I like that when we have a full council.
I agree.
All right, what I'm hearing is we will present an ordinance for the updating of the code. We will refer to the PSAC, the fee schedule, have them discuss it, have hearings on that. And on the burn ban, we will schedule it for a standalone issue down the road when we've got all 7 council members here to discuss it again. And of course, we'll give Gresham Fire notice if we're going to do it. And probably, what I heard, we'll probably do a more social media posting on that discussion.
Yeah, good
We
idea.
did have a good turnout tonight, apparently.
People seem to have found out. about
Yeah,
it,
so we will make it clear, like we're doing for the dogs and parks things next month.
But I do like how the social media has been more involved lately. So.
Yeah.
Ray, would it be possible to get an article in the Champion
Sure.
before we meet on this
Probably
subject?
should,
'Cause
yeah.
we didn't hear one person in favor of the burn ban, so there's no rush. You know, we're just down one person. I'd be willing to vote even right now on tabling the burn ban.
This is just a discussion item. We don't need to table it or do anything.
Well, we're giving direction to bring it up for a second swing at the
In the
plate.
fullness of time, is what I'm hearing, that eventually it'll come back.
We just need more information.
Okay, well, I'll back off, and as long as we agree to put it in the Champion prior to us discussing it on council, because we're heading into spring break anyway, so there should be adequate time to do that. This is our last meeting for, I think, 6 weeks.
Yes, what I'm hearing is I'll put together a champion article for next time, just discussing the burn ban issue and try to make it here's an issue, here's what other cities are doing, here's Troutdale Council's concern that's been expressed tonight, and just ask people to think about the issue and reach out to the council members, and I'll put your home addresses so they come knock on your, no. I'm kidding.
Couldn't you put a post or
Yeah.
comment on Facebook on Troutdale, City of Troutdale, and then they can put their comments on the social media post?
Yeah, we can.
And
We
then you
can.
can put
Well-
that in the Champion of.
We'll do the article, let them know, find the social media post, and then just make comments, and we have a whole string of comments, so we can elicit public comment
Then
on
we
it
can
from
all
a
see
wide
it
range of
as a
people.
public.
Yeah, that's a good
Okay.
suggestion.
Love
All
it.
right,
Good.
Thank you.
Well, thank
Just
you.
one last
Yes,
thing.
go ahead.
I'm not necessarily opposed to some form of limiting how often burns happen. And I live kind of in an area that has a lot of acreage around me. And I can tell you, I mean, I appreciate property rights, but when it's the 10th day in a row that, smoke is still coming straight into my house and, I'm trying to seal everything off, it gets pretty tiring. So I'm not necessarily opposed to having a limit on the number of days. I think that's just kind of a compromise.
Go ahead, Glenn.
I'm familiar with Sandy Glantz, or Councilor Glantz's neighborhood, and I don't think the burn ban would change anything, because I think that those agricultural properties are actually they have a Troutdale address, but they're not inside the urban growth boundary. So they would fall under, I believe, agricultural burning for Fire District 10, if I'm not mistaken.
Some close to me are in Troutdale. They've annexed. Yeah, there's a lot of burning around me, so if at some point this also goes to Multnomah County to have some kind of number of days, or even if I knew when to expect it, that would be great. Other than, hey, it's a burn day. Okay, close all the windows, seal everything up.
A good thing to do might be to call the burn line yourself and see if they're burning on days they're not allowed to. That'd be appropriate call to the fire department.
Yeah, there's a lot of garbage burning too, which I didn't realize was illegal.
Yeah, we should take care of all those issues, but I caution ourselves on limiting like the other cities did, because look where it led. Now that they have a complete burn ban. So I'd be very concerned about doing anything like that.
I appreciate the slippery slope argument, but I still think that There's a happy medium.
Thanks. Thank you, Sandy.
All right, if there's nothing else, we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Sounds good.
Which is an update on the Urban Flood Safety and Water Quality District, UFSWQD, capital funding. I've been serving as the city's representative on this UFSWQD, as has Eric Mueller. And he's going to make a report about the, updating the funding package. It is a catchy name, though, UFSWQD. We've never figured out how to pronounce it, at least I haven't.
It does not roll off the tongue.
No.
So, yes, thank you, Council President Rittma, and just see if I can get this to run here. There we go. Okay, so I'll just quickly run through context for the Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District. Get this to move here. Come on. There we go. Okay, so the Portland Metropolitan Levee System, PLMS, is a 27-mile levee system. Starts on the east end here in Troutdale on the Sandy River, and stretches all the way to the west, way into Portland and over to Ivy Lake, well past the airport. Helps deal with the flooding risk from the Columbia River. It protects some 8,000 residents. Several thousand of those live right here in East County, nearby neighbors. Large manufacturing and warehouse, which we are very familiar with here in Troutdale. Not just one airport of Portland International, but also the Troutdale Airport is also protected by the levee system. Some 16 billion of annual economic activity. I understood right, it's the highest concentration of commerce, economic activity in terms of square footage in the state. Lots of natural habitat as well. In your packet, Exhibit C kind of outlines in more detail kind of all the various things that are protected by the levee system. But back in 2011, the Army Corps of Engineers, who does the regulation of the levee conditions, had notified our local drainage districts and FEMA, who does the accreditation of the levees, that our levee system, which goes back some 100 years in terms of parts of the infrastructure, were no longer meeting the standards. The standards had increased as a result of the lessons learned from Katrina and the flooding that had occurred there. Fortunately, there's some solutions that are relatively cost-effective and straightforward in terms of expanding the levees and the floodwalls, upgrading the pumps and other infrastructure, and increasing sort of the flood capacity with natural areas, some of which, is evidenced right out here in the Troutdale Reynolds Industrial Park. Back in 2012, the city of Troutdale joined with some 30 partners to form what was then known as Levee Ready Columbia. That Levee Ready Columbia has been going on since then, and in theory is scheduled to reach the end of its functioning at the end of June of this year, is when the current IGA amongst the government partners comes to conclusion. Levee Ready Columbia worked through a number of solutions, and they're urging the legislature in 2019 created a new special district to consolidate the 400-year-old legacy drainage districts into one, and then to address dealing with the necessary improvements and upgrades and construction that might be required to reobtain the FEMA accreditation of the levees. And that was what created the Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District, or the UFSWQD, that doesn't roll off the tongue. It is, as you can see, territory-wise, the orange is the sort of the existing outline of the managed floodplain and the existing territories of those 4 legacy drainage districts, Peninsula Drainage District 1, Peninsula Drainage District 2, in Portland, Multnomah County Drainage District, which stretches from there in Portland on the west side of the airport all the way over to the Sandy Drainage Improvement Company, which covers Troutdale. The more shaded area somewhat illustrates some of the drainage basin and or watershed, as that may be referred to. And then the white area going down around to the county line and on the east side is Multnomah County within the urban growth boundary as specified by the metro regulations. That is the territory at which the legislature determined that the new district would be its boundaries. When the legislature created the new district, it incorporated sort of the 4 ones that are sort of highlighted there in yellow. Those are sort of the traditional historic drainage district kind of functions: reducing flooding, protecting from flood risk, responding to flood emergencies, conveying of water, as part of the overall package that was put together and from all the various stakeholders. Having the district created through the legislature, they added what we refer to as the new mandates, which are the ones that are kind of the green highlights of contribute to improved water quality and habitat, landscape resilience, promote equity and social justice across all the district's operations, prepare and adapt to climate change, and then provide information on the cultural history of the territory related to the managed floodplain. Funding needs, sort of, there's the operational side, and then there's capital project side. The operations sort of parallel those ones that were on the previous page in terms of the kind of ongoing operations. The capital side deals with the Army Corps projects, the recertification requirements that FEMA's got, as well as some of the new mandates. So the new district board, or what is referred to as the initial board, which is where Councilman Rittman and I are on currently, is all appointed. There are 17 members appointed to this board, a wide variety of stakeholders, includes the city and all the cities, includes Metro, the county, the Port of Portland, the 4 drainage districts, and then 4 appointees from the governor related to the environment and the community. Business owner, a business owner operation in the managed floodplain and a resident of the managed floodplain. That brings us to this 17-member board, which provides a wide variety of perspectives and helps address kind of all the different angles, but is somewhat challenging just to kind of move forward because it's such a large group to all herd toward a conclusion on things. But in any case, as I mentioned, there's 2 funding pathways that the initial board was required to address. One was the kind of day-to-day operational, or the operations and maintenance funding, running the pumps day-to-day. The other is all the capital projects, the PLMS recertification projects, which is really what we're going to talk about this evening, the capital side. So the Exhibit B that's in your packet is the flood safety capital investment program summary. It's gotten it down to, I think, 14, 15 pages. I think one of the original packages that the board went through was 86-page summary, which I've had a tough time with them using the word summary when it was 86 pages, but nevertheless, the recaps, the kind of the highlights are upgrades the levees and floodwalls in the most vulnerable areas. Deals to upgrade the levees to more modern construction standards and rehabilitate, replace some of the drainage infrastructure that's failed, increase the resilience, and sort of the capacity to deal with flood water so that there's time to process it with more open space, opportunity to store water for processing and so forth, and it supports clean water and habitat improvement. And then upgrade pumps and other aging infrastructure. This is a snapshot of the Sandy Drainage Improvement Company pump station that's there just at the end of the weir, over on the, just across the border actually into Fairview. But that was back in 1996 during that high water event that occurred back then. It needs some upgrades, it needs to be physically raised. There's a number of upgrades, but it's just an example. There's 12 different pump stations across that whole 27 miles, and all of them require some degree or another of some improvement and upgrade. The overall project package that is outlined or recapped in that Exhibit B totals some $295 million. These columns and the phases are basically stretch out about 10 years. The first phase is somewhere the 3 to 5 year completion range. The second one is probably year 4 to year 8, and the third is kind of year 7 to year 10. There's going to be some bleed over. Some of the projects are sequential. You can't really do project B until you do project A, kind of because of some physical connectedness and so forth. There's other things that sort of pace how quickly things can be done. Obviously, this time of the year and during the spring snowmelt, you can't be working on the levees, and so there's a kind of a truncated construction window that you might not have outside of the levee construction area. So that also adds some pacing to how quickly some of this can be done. So the overall timeline, start to finish, is targeted to be about a 10-year construction rehabilitation cycle to complete all of those $295 million worth of projects. Within that $295 million, Congress in the Water Resources, let's get the acronym wrong. Anyway, the Water Resources Act appropriation in 2022 year end provided some nearly $100 million to the Army Corps of Engineers specifically for the Portland Metropolitan levee system rehabilitation. And so that money has been already appropriated by Congress. It's available to the Corps to draw on for these projects, but the catch is there is a local match required. And that's sort of what brings us to how we fund this $295 million overall project. It's 3 parts. There's the measure 26-243, which is the $150 million general obligation bond referral measure that the board, initial board voted and referred to the voters on February 7th, I believe it was. That would then provide the necessary local match, which would allow the Corps to be able to spend that $100 million that they have available to contribute toward the overall project. And then as part of the negotiation on the political front to get to that $150 million referral level, the governor has pledged to work with the legislature to provide some $45 million from state sources, which I think addresses one of the questions that Councilor One had when Jim Middaugh was here the last time around. You asked why the state wasn't contributing more toward this, and this is part of what they'll then be contributing toward. The governor hasn't pledged exactly where it will come from because, of course, as being the former speaker, she knows full well that the legislature is the one that controls the appropriations process, so she has to be kind of delicate, or shall we say political, in how she phrases those things. But there's commitment to bring that $45 million. How that's going to be processed and in what tranches we expect that portions of it are going to come over the course of several biennium. But then again, as I mentioned, there's about a 10-year cycle to accomplish all of these construction projects. The measure that was referred, it's gone through the various notice periods, challenge periods, approval of the language by the Secretary of State's office, et cetera. The county has then assigned the measure number and it has it published on their website regarding the referral. That's quoted both in your staff report packet as well as there on the screen, but the $150 million in principal amount of general obligation bonds, the
estimate, which for general obligation bonds is a requirement that you put out a calculation and an estimate of what the cost would be. And so it was done conservatively. There's estimated 11 cents per thousand, and based on the assessor's average of that entire urban growth boundary, which is the district's boundary, that average assessed value of 246,712 as the average home. That's where that calculation of the 2667 annually comes from. Now, there's a number of pieces related to that. It's a conservative amount that was estimated. Staff has related to the board multiple times that they're going to manage the issuance of the debt in a way that minimizes the cost to the taxpayers. And again, given that 10-year time frame, even if the bond was approved today, the bonds were issued Wednesday, and we had all 295 million on Thursday, it would still probably take us 9 years of that 10 years to implement everything. So it makes no sense financially or logistically to rush out and issue a lot of the value until those amounts are needed. And indeed, some of the conversations with the governor's staff and so forth, some of that funding that they're looking at providing some of the early funding in the first year. There's some funding that will need to be done kind of as the finalized design phase, which is really the next 2 years with the core is done. And so it is likely going to be a year or two out before there's meaningful amount of that 150 million would actually be issued. So that 11 cents per thousand is really a conservative, higher representation of what is most likely to actually be there, at least for several years. Of that 11 cents per thousand and that 150 million, the SDIC locally, the benefits needs, investment needs there's about a third of the levy area needs some resiliency built in. The fragility standards aren't quite there based on how it was constructed decades ago. The pump station, as we mentioned before, needs to be elevated. It's too low. The head wall needs to be rebuilt, and the whole platform section needs to be raised. The capital projects, it's estimated the SDIC portion is about 25 million of that number that would be spent very nearby locally of that overall project. The share of that $150 million repayment, the share of the general obligation bond based on it being district-wide, which is again, all of Multnomah County inside the urban growth boundary, Portland is going to be, responsible for about 84% of that burden. Troutdale looks to be about 2% of that burden, again, based on the overall property values. As I estimate that out based on the most recent values, which of course this isn't going to be the value that's used because it's going to be a year or two from now before that happens, but at our 1.8 billion at 11 cents per thousand, it's about $200,000 a year from Troutdale taxpayers that would be paid toward the bond if the whole 11 cents per thousand was levied all at once, which again, I don't see that happening, but it would be that. But if that's what occurred, and then if that was all nice and level and even for the entire 20 years of the bond, we're looking at about $4 million paid by the Troutdale taxpayers. And there's about 25 million worth of upgrades going into the SDIC territory. So it's a fairly good financial return for the Troutdale taxpayers. Again, the bonds aren't going to be all issued at once. And of course, the assessed values will go up each year. Interest rates are going to change. The debt service amount are going to change. So all of these variables will change some, but that's a point in time kind of representation about sort of what the impact and what the payback benefit might be. So in summary, it's sort of keep our eyes on the prize. There's 65% of the PLMS costs coming from the Fed based on us doing the 35% match along with all the other funding. There's also some other funding that we're already getting through a separate FEMA program. We're looking at 110 million or more of federal funding toward the overall program that's going to be available or brought through. And so with that, but I guess before I would take questions, I wanted to make sure that the Troutdale representative on the Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District certainly had the opportunity to share whatever perspective in terms of update on this.
Well, thanks, Eric. I'll just put it in simple terms. We are being invited to endorse and request that people vote for a general obligation bond for $150 million that will be spread over the entire, this urban flood district. There's going to be a cost, it's a tax. The reason we're asking people, if we do endorse this, we're asking people to do it is because there's at least $100 million in federal funding that this district needs to match in order to get the federal funding. So we're getting good value for money, and we're asking the state to kick in another 45 million. We'll see how that goes. But that's the essence of the resolution in the packet. I have always, I spoke, the last time we addressed this district, which I've been serving on for years now, the creation of it and the funding of it and everything, had the strongest objection to parts of what the legislature ended up adopting, the way operations were funded. I never had an objection to this bond. This bond is a capital bond. There's matching federal funds. I always was in favor of it. And the best thing is that it is levied equally throughout the district. There is no tax compression that takes place with the other funding mechanisms that they're going to end up using. But for this bond, everybody is treated the same throughout the district. So it's fair to Troutdale. It's a good deal for Troutdale. And this levee project is really important to the jobs and development both in Troutdale and throughout the district, basically all around the airport, west of the airport, east of the airport. So this is a very important project in preserving the viability of our industrial base. And so it is asking people to vote for a general obligation bond. So there is a tax involved. I'm going to favor it, and I'll leave it at that. And Eric, if you're done, I will open it up for questions from council.
Did we hear, I see, are we gonna wait for public comment to hear?
Well, we'll have public comment, but
All right.
Does anyone on the council wish to ask a question of Eric? We've got a lot of stuff in the packet that is very complicated, but yes, Gordon, go ahead.
First off, yes, that is a mouthful of an acronym name to have. That is terrible. Terrible to try to roll off your tongue. But yes, as a council to endorse a bond, and then earlier, we're talking about a fee schedule for Gresham, and this next year, we're going to be have contracts, and we're going to be asking for, potentially joining a fire district and another bond. There's a lot of potentials for our community. I'm really just trying to wrap my head around. I see, jobs and growth and safety and everything else out there to have these levies, but just for us to go out there and stamp a blanket, hey, let's roll on this. Because I'm not as in tune with it as you are, living, breathing it every day. I'm just taking a moment to wrap my head around it before, I read it in the packet, hearing it for, out loud for the first time. It's just tough to say, yes, right away on it, with knowing all these other things maybe looming in the background.
We shouldn't do it lightly. We
Yes,
should not do it lightly.
yes, it's just about priorities, right? And to endorse something, stamping our names on it to say, hey, we really need this over other things, because everything can't be a priority, right?
Well, right, and I would say Troutdale's endorsement may not persuade Troutdale citizens to vote for this.
And it may
but
not.
The whole district votes on it. Portland is gonna outvote us like it always does.
Oh, yeah.
On things. And so we shouldn't do it lightly. And I wouldn't be saying that I favor the bond. I don't say that lightly, because it will cost citizens, and there's a lot of other calls on our money. And I would not hold it against anyone if they didn't want to vote for this, you know, really, truly. Once we get in the ballot, we get to vote on the bond too. So this is being referred to the voters. The voters have the final say.
Sandy's got her hand up.
Sandy, go for it.
Yep, I have a question. I read through this and I heard you say that the bond was like over 10 years, but then I heard you say it was over 20 years. Does this property tax item stay on our bills forever, or does it have a time limit?
Well, the 10 years was, I was trying to refer to the amount of time it was going to take to accomplish all of the capital construction projects that were on that schedule. And so that's what the 10-year time frame is. The 20-year time frame I'm referring to is, you know, it's an assumption, because generally in Oregon, municipal bonds are issued with a 20-year series. It's not absolutely have to be done that way, but that's generally how they're done, is a 20-year cycle. And so if the voters were to approve the ballot measure, then they would be agreeing to the property tax levy to be on their property tax bills for that 20-year time frame, or I don't want to say it's 20 years from the time they vote. It's basically 20 years from the time the debt starts to be repaid effectively. The time frame actually might be longer, because if you issue 35, 40 million in the first year and another 50 million in the third year, and it takes you, you know, 4 or 5 years to get the entire 150 million issued, well, you've started to make payments on the first series of debt, and it's going to end in 20 years, but those other debts that were issued the second year and the third year will carry on. And so the absolute time frame might be, say, 25 years before it disappeared, but any individual debt is generally structured as a 20-year debt service. So, but that's all typical case, not anything that's absolutely established at this point.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that there is an end to this. It's not like, 15 years from now, they say, oh, we need to, extend this and that for these other bonds, and it turns into.
Well, it's very typical for school districts to do a series of bonds where they will borrow and they will rebuild or rehab one elementary school, and they'll get that done, and they'll get close to that being done. And at year 18, they'll go back to the voters with a new bond.
Okay.
But each time the voters get a chance to vote. So it wouldn't be that the district could say, well, we're going to add to the debt just because the district wants to. No, it would be the voters are if they approve this measure, they're allowed to issue up to 150 million, not 151, not 155, because they ran short. It's the voters gave a limit. They can go back to the voters and ask for more later, but again, that's going to be up to the voters.
And then, thank you. My last question is, was this looked at also for things like earthquakes in terms of upgrading the system and liquefaction?
The Army Corps of Engineers has a kind of a nationwide standard that they've developed for levees that they apply across the country. And it has a whole series of engineering requirements, exactly what the earthquake, I think it's more related to what they refer to as liquefaction that they get concerned about with earthen works. But all of that is regulated by the Army Corps of Engineers. And so it's sort of whatever their standard is what the standard is.
Thank you.
Questions?
I think you answered my main question, which is our percentage of what Troutdale pays into this.
Then that's just an estimate based on, you know, because general obligation bonds are repaid based on an assessment against ad valorem or assessed value.
Yeah.
And so if you take all of the values across the entire district and add them up, Troutdale has about 2% of that overall total.
Yeah.
Therefore, it would bear about 2% of the cost. I mean, that'll vary a little bit year to year, but, you know, Portland is such a huge amount.
Yeah.
It's, you know, Troutdale isn't going to jump to 10%. I mean, they're just, you know.
And then is this bond, and then the upgrades that they're doing, does this plan for the future? So we're not just like fixing and patching a problem and not thinking about maintenance ongoing, like we discussed with our water systems and stuff. When we raise rates, it's for a reason. We have to prolong our things. Is there part of this for ongoing upkeep? Or is this just to like patch a problem right now, and then we're gonna have, like, I think Sandy was getting at maybe, is that we're gonna patch this problem now, and then 20 years, we're gonna patch another problem, and then it's just gonna keep on going down?
Maybe if I can jump into where Eric thinks about an answer to that one, if you don't mind. This issue of our levy has been studied for 8, 9, 10 years. It all started after Katrina, I believe, in 2003, 4, or 5, the flooding in New Orleans, that the Army Corps of Engineers started looking at all flood safety systems around the United States and says, we need to up our game in these areas, especially with the issues regarding climate change and potentially higher water levels. And so the whole levee district, which actually is 4 levee districts, and we're just in the Sandy Drainage Improvement Company, it had a complete analysis of all the underfunded, undercompleted capital projects that needed to bring it up to Army Corps of Engineers standards. And if we don't bring it up to Army Corps of Engineers standards, that affects flood insurance and affects safety. And so what this bond levy of 150 plus the 100 million from the Fed matching funds, plus if the legislature had given us, I don't even know if they did, 45 million.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
But they've adjourned, so maybe the emergency board. Anyway, these do all the projects that over the years were not completed. Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the Sandy Drainage out here, when you talk about the things that are getting done, we have a pump station that's down there near Chinook Landing. That's kind of the end of our whole drainage way that starts at Amazon and goes west. That pump station was built in the early 40s. One of the pumps in it is from 1940 something. One time the floodwaters got so high it flooded the pump station itself. And so it needs to be lifted higher so it doesn't get flooded out, and it needs the pumps upgraded inside of it so it could pump out water that would flood Amazon, FedEx, all that industrial area that we have. And the second one is there's a cross levee that has a lift gate between Fairview to keep all the water out of Fairview, out of Troutdale, which is a good thing, right? Or vice versa. The lift gate is broken. And so there's no way to control cross waters back and forth between the two. And so I'll leave it up to Councilor Ripma and Eric to say if I missed one of those. Those are directly impacting things that are not performing like they should now. So.
Can I add one? This is to endorse a general obligation bond, or GO bond. A GO bond can only be used for capital programs. It can't be used for routine maintenance. So that comes out of the other piece that Councilor Ripma talked about him not being in such support of. But so in terms of, you said, does this end? Yeah, it does. Okay. Because every project that gets paid for has to have a
fairly substantial, long life. It's not a year-to-year maintenance sort of stuff.
Okay. There's separate, what I was
Yeah.
asking, there's separate issues,
Yeah.
separate budgets, separate banks of money. Got it.
Yeah, this is all kind of on the large capital project side that have a start and a completion.
Yeah.
Whether 20 years from now, there are not things that are now going to be 20 years older that are going to need to be fixed.
Yeah.
I don't want to give you that assurance that that isn't going to be the case.
Yeah, okay.
But in terms of the items that have been identified, I mean, there's been multiple inventories and assessments and studies and engineering reports and on and on and on going on since 2012.
Yeah.
12, 13 years of studies. And, you know, so these are the projects that sort of need to get us where we need to be. There will be a need for maintenance ongoing. I'm sorry, Councilor Redmond, you were gonna.
Well, it won't, yeah, it doesn't cover maintenance, but the projects that are going to be built with the money raised will be building for the future. I mean, they'll be replacing things that need to be replaced, but it doesn't cover maintenance.
Yeah.
It doesn't cover operations. All right, Glenn, your turn.
Yeah. Is the rate for commercial properties going to be the 0.11 as well?
Well, again, the 0.11 is an estimate, and I'm certain it's going to be different than that, but that's, we have to use something for the bond measure, but it would be the same for any property across the entire district, commercial, residential, industrial. It's based on the ad valorem assessed value.
And then I noticed you're going off of assessed value, but you know, for new homeowners, I think the average price home in Troutdale now is $485. So that's going to be quite a bit higher for a first-time homeowner paying this. And can you go to the map that showed the district?
Sure. That up but as to your comment about the homes, it is built. The assessment is, or rather, the property tax levy is based on assessed value, not based on.
But even new homes will be brought in to an assessed value of about, I think it's 88, 89% of the real market value, because the county imposes the tax at the average rate in the county at this point.
Won't change property ratio.
Still,
That's all I know about it.
Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah. Now, I understand that Wood Village is not going to have to pay anything.
Oh, they will.
Oh,
no, they will.
Okay. So
yeah,
for this,
everything that's in that white, all the way down to the Clackamas County line, would pay toward the bond.
Okay, but they're exempt from the other part that Dave was against.
Oh, I don't know about that.
They are.
No, the operations side, the operations funding, which is not what's in here, but the Wood Villages would also be subject to what the legislature called when they did it, the flood safety intergovernmental fee. And so Wood Village will also be subject to that. What Wood Village doesn't pay toward is they don't pay anything that the districts do, because none of Wood Village is in the managed floodplain. So none of their residents, none of their property owners are in the managed floodplain. They don't pay anything now to any of the legacy drainage districts.
But you could say the same thing about Gresham then too. But
no, Gresham has a notch that goes all the way to the river. I mean, it's not huge.
Wood Village's water goes down there. It
goes
downhill. So it's
well, all the water in Gresham runs down the hill, down Fairview Creek, and all the way down to Blue Lake.
That one really rubs me that they're not having to pay anything for that portion of it. But I know that's a separate issue. And I'm also, I'm disappointed in our own state rep and representatives that formed this district. without zero outreach to this council or our citizens. And once you have a district, I mean, there's no stopping it. It's like Metro. It's they will have their own attorneys, their own staff, and Portland's going to vote whatever they want through, and we won't be able to stop it. But I guess that's water under the bridge at this point. But we started this thing off with good intentions by joining up. For almost 100 years, the Sandy Drainage District took care of our portion of the levee. Our levees were in the best shape. They only charged the people that were being protected by that levee. We didn't have to pay anything for that. It was self-sufficient and it was working. And now it's turned into this brand new government agency. And I think years from now, people are going to look at the people that allowed that to happen, just like Metro. And there'll be no way to stop it. So, I'm really frustrated with the whole process. And I don't know if I'm going to be supportive or not.
Well, Sandy Drainage Improvement Company has done as best they could over the years. They've been very focused on maintaining as low a cost as possible, but that's also resulted in sort of having these $25 million worth of investments that are needed, and that would be a pretty big burden just on those folks that are out in the managed floodplain of the Sandy Drainage Improvement Company if they had to fund that entire $25 million.
Well, that number jumped quite a bit from when the district was created. That instantly jumped. And we're also, we're trying to get our levees to the standard to sustain a hurricane, because it's a federal rule. And, it's been, I think the Columbus Day storm might have been classed as a hurricane, but I think that's about it.
63,
I mean, just, I want the public to really know the truth, so that's why I'm bringing it in. That's all I got.
Well, all right. Without any objection, I'll open it to public comment. Does anyone here in the council chambers wish to address us on the?
Tanny is a third initial board member on the district.
That's right, Tanny serves on the district.
Certainly want to have him have an opportunity to comment.
I do. Good evening, Council President Rittman and city councilors. Tanny Stephenson. I've served on the Sandy Drainage Improvement Company board since 2015. I'm presently serve as chairman of that organization, and I serve as co-vice chair of the Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District Board. And, looking at this, I'm going to use my Sandy Drainage Improvement Company hat because that's really what affects us here. So I'm really going to speak as a private citizen, but a lot has changed in 100 years. I mean, you look at this and now you got Hurricane Katrina with a whole new set of standards, and we're dealing with climate change, social justice, equity. And I don't know this, all these things were talked about 100 years ago. And levee is a pretty technical piece of equipment. Looks like you just shove some dirt and pounded it in, but there's a lot going on inside of those things. And, we talked about the pump station in 1996, when we had the flood. Our pump station was inside the building with 3 feet of water. So you've got people in there with hip waders on, working with 1,200 volts of electricity. And luckily they did it. I didn't, I watched. That was as close as I was going to get, but we had people that were willing to do it and get the water pumped. And so if you look at this, a pump is $4 million. Because the first time I looked at this, I'm like, how the heck can this cost so much? Where are they buying this stuff from? But a pump is $4 million. All of this stuff is extremely expensive, and it really costs a lot to do this work. And then it's like, so who's paying? And why are they paying? Why aren't those people paying and all that? And we've battered that around a lot. But if you look at it, sure, the people down in the basin have been paying, and I'm thinking about the comment you just made. Those are the people that are benefiting. And they are. But as a city, we take 28 million gallons of water a year and we send it down there. Without a note, card, wrap, bow,
Flowers.
food stamps, anything. We just send it down there. And so that all's got to be dealt with. And that's partially how you get here. All this stuff costs way more than it used to. It used to be these people could fund a lot of this stuff themselves. The magnitude of what we're looking at, they really can't. And I look at it and I took 23 businesses, right? And yes, I've got Amazon in there, but I've also got Sherry's restaurant and a number of others. Just try to take a mix. And those are our customers. So presently, those 23 are paying today about $965,000 between the sandy drainage fees and the city stormwater fees and what the bond would cost. So that's what they'd be paying for 23 of them. So to give you some context, next year, those guys, that same group, their tax bill to the county will be about $8.1 million. So they're paying something. As Mr. Mueller said, we're looking at about a $4 million issue over 20 years. And the 11 cents, frankly, is going to be on the high side. I know I'll do everything that I can to control costs, but here's a really critical piece to this. If we do this now and we approve it, we're able to come up with a 35% match that we need, which gets us about $103 million from the federal government. Right? We don't do it, we don't get the 103 million. And frankly, we're gonna have to do this work anyway, whether we want to or not. The pump station's gonna have to be rebuilt whether we want it to do it or not, or things are gonna flood. And things flood down there. It's their problem, but it's all of our problems. You put 2,700 Amazon workers out of work. What does that do for us? What does it not do for us? It's a cost that everybody's going to bear, but it's one of these things that, in my opinion, is worth doing. And I gotta say, for me, my taxes, I don't know about yours, my property taxes have gone up 20% over the last 4 years, which is a lot. But I'll also, I can either pay a lot of money for a library that I'm not going to use, or I can pay a little bit of money for a levee system that's going to keep a lot of people safe. And I also would agree with you that the operating model that we'll be working on going forward does need some refinement.
Yeah, thanks, Danny.
Any questions?
Danny, did you vote yes or no on the last meeting?
I don't know that I can say that.
If it was a yes or no, was it unanimous? Can you answer that?
It was not.
Okay.
It's important to note that the initial board did not vote for or against the bond. What the initial board did is they voted to refer a question to the voters. And so it was a vote to refer it, not to approve the bond, because the board can't approve the bonds. The 17-member board, there were 14 in favor and 3 abstentions. We were fortunate that we didn't have anybody take any active opposition. But as I mentioned, there's 17 board members with a wide variety of stakeholder positions. And so I think it's a positive that, you know, we're able to get to that degree of consensus.
It's a very diverse group.
It sounds good until you
Okay.
realize, you know, I love taking it to the voters until you realize Portland's gonna dominate that vote. And they need the most work on their levies. They're far worse shape than
They
us.
definitely do, but one of the questions that this body has asked before, are we gonna be funding all this stuff in Portland? And I don't believe at this stage that is going to be the case for us.
Yeah. Just a comment, I was at the League of Oregon Cities and Kate Brown was the governor at the time, and she gave a speech, and she stated that levee district and that property on the Columbia River is the single largest revenue source in the state of Oregon. So it seems to me like the state should be paying a lot more to you know, they have the most to lose. You know, what is it, 16 billion a year? I think it's more than that.
We do have a staff that's very good at shaking down the state and federal government on a regular basis and seeing what falls out of their pockets.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks you guys for your hard work on that. I know it was very time consuming.
Anybody else wish to address public comment at this point? Thank you, Tanya. Thank you for everything. All right.
Shelby Stephenson, I just had a question. So after you do all this work, is that when we'll get accredited on the levies? I just wondered the timing of when the accreditation happens. Is it 10 years?
My understanding is the accreditation process will occur probably about 5 years out from now. You know, because there's about an 18 months. You know, if something got approved today, it's about 18 months before the shovel can start turning, and then there's going to be probably a 3-year construction cycle, and then they've got to do the engineers have to come, you know, the Corps has to come in and verify that it was built the way it needs to be built before they'll sign off on it, and then they got to turn that over to FEMA, who then has to say that's acceptable, we'll accredit.
So I guess to even answer your question, does this get us there? Yes, it does. And the infrastructure that you're replacing has got like a very, 70-year, 50-year type of life to it. The equipment does. The levees have longer than that, except when homeless people burrow into them and things of that nature, you've got to go in and fix those. But these things withstand the test of time, and ours overall are in better shape than they are downriver.
All right, well, thank you, Tammy. Thank you. Got a couple other public comments. Please, go ahead. State your name and
Sherry Winters again. I just want to say, contrary to maybe what's been said, and that is that I do not believe that government actually makes money. They just spend it. It's the taxpaying money. Taxpayer pays into it. So when you tell me that a general bond is going for Troutdale, and then you tell me, oh, we can get a federal match, and oh, we can get some money from the state, I just say what you did is I'm opening on my pocket, and 3 different people are now sticking their hands in my pocket and taking my money. So that's the way I see it. And then I just keep thinking, one of the last times Troutdale asked for some big bond, yes, it was for this building and a police department, of which evaporated, becoming a Troutdale Police Department, and is now belongs to the county practically. I know the building might still belong to us. However, I've been paying on that, and I don't see the results of what I voted for. So just food for thought.
Woodrow Troutdale resident for a couple years now. So it sounds like that some of the items, the pumps and other mechanical features, might have some historical value, perhaps, once they remove the old ones. I know up until fairly recently, I had no idea that there was a levee even there. And even though I've hiked upon it and walked upon it and that sort of stuff, didn't realize that it was actually a levee. Maybe there's an opportunity to use some of the old discarded 100-year-old plus pumps or whatever to help educate and to help share this information that, there was a massive flood so many decades ago, and that this is an important feature of our community, and that we do need to remember it and what it does to keep us safe. And I think I think it's an important element to add to this discussion. So, thank you.
It is, yes, thanks.
Yes, levee hides in plain sight.
Yes, Council President, if I can just throw in an anecdote, the last really big flood was in 1864. And it was big enough that the city of Lynn City was completely wiped out and flooded, and they had to move it up on the embankment, higher elevation, and became the city of West Lynn, because they moved it due west about a half a mile from Lynn City. And there was also a city on the Clackamas River, God, whose name escapes me, and it's, Kanawha, I think. It's completely gone, never been rebuilt. So floods do happen. They're not all that frequent, but the levees work.
Well, the most recent was the Vanport in 1948.
Anyone else for public comment in the room? Otherwise, I'll invite public comment from Zoom. Anyone wish to address the council on this resolution? All right, I don't see anybody. Rich, is that you? Are you?
It's actually Carol.
Oh, Carol.
Hi.
Very good.
I think a levy is important, but I am really concerned about the taxes that keep being imposed on Troutdale citizens. I'm afraid that I'm going to be taxed out of my home, and I've been here 20 years. So we have all these ideas of things, but Multnomah County keeps taxing us on many things. And I'm just concerned for the increase of taxes and then not being able to pay it and then losing my home. So that's what I wanted to say.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Any further discussion at council? Well, this isn't an easy thing. There's no, it's my opinion is that the taxes that are used for something like this, that protects people's property, jobs. I happen to be in a happy position of probably being able to afford it. We'll see. It might get out of hand at some point, but this to me is a call, a good call for use of our taxpayer monies wisely, rebuilding infrastructure that needs to be rebuilt. But as I said, I'm not going to hold it against anyone who votes against this, because I question whether Troutdale voters would be the one to carry this to victory. It will be carried along by the much larger entities that are part of this district, for good or for bad. And usually it's for bad. But I think this is an important and valuable, that the money raised would be wisely used and would be good for Troutdale, and that's why I'm in favor. But I would entertain a motion if someone wants to. We have a motion in the packet.
Well, I'll make a motion. A resolution for the Troutdale City Council declaring its support for the $150 million bond measure to upgrade levees, flood walls, water pumps, and natural floodplain restorations brought by the Urban Flood Safety and Water Quality District Measure 26-243.
I'll second it.
All right. If there's no further discussion, Kendra, please call the roll.
I just wanted, this is just showing our support. And like I said,
that is all it is.
Just showing our support. It's still gonna probably go to voters at some time, but like I said, I struggle with the fact that this is what I'm saying is the most important thing that I want to throw my support behind. So just saying I'm struggling.
Understood, understood.
Just to clarify, the ballot measure that's enclosed in there and the staff report and so forth, it goes before the voters at I believe it's the May 21st primary election.
Point of order, though, we're
not voting
done
on
with
that.
staff, but we're done with staff, right?
Yes, although you understand this, yes, it will, this
Right.
bond will not go into effect unless the voters of the district vote for it. We're just saying we think it's a good idea to vote for it. That's all, as a city and mayor and council. Any other comments? Please call the roll.
Counselor Caswell.
Yeah.
Counselor Wynn.
No.
Counselor White.
No.
Counselor Wittrin.
No.
Counselor Glantz.
Yes.
President Counselor.
Yes. Well, that didn't sound like it worked.
It was a tie, so I think it
Four
fails.
no's.
No, it was 4 no's.
It was.
Or
The first
No,
three.
three.
no's.
I think it's
3 no's,
3-3.
3 yeses.
I thought Allison
No,
was a yes.
3-2. Or 4.
I'm sorry,
3-3.
could you rattle off who? how
Counselor
did it go?
Caswell, yes. Counselor Wynn, no. Counselor White, no. Counselor Wittrin, no. Counselor Glantz, yes. Britma, yes.
Okay, so it was tied and that therefore does not pass.
It does not pass, and your reconsideration rules, if I remember right, we'll have to send you an email tomorrow about it, would allow at the next council meeting, which is about 6 weeks away, anyone could change their vote to the other side and then become part of the prevailing group and ask for reconsideration if they want it.
Right. Anyway, think about it. That
It's gonna pass regardless, is my opinion.
not this resolution necessarily. Unless Randy, I don't know where Randy is on it, so, but we'll see. Anyway, all right, moving on. And it's time we moved on. It's a resolution calling for urgent ambulance staffing model reform in Multnomah County.
Thank you,
Right.
Council President. This was placed on the agenda at the request of Mayor Lauer. Mayor Lauer has been working with the other 3 mayors in East County to work with Multnomah County to get them to change their policy. The packet gives a really good background on the situation, so I'll try to cut to the quick. Currently, ambulance responses in Multnomah County lag behind desirable levels. Only 60% of ambulances get on scene within 8 minutes of being dispatched. The primary reason is staffing. Multnomah County is one of the very few jurisdictions in all of the United States that requires 2 paramedics instead of 1 paramedic and 1 EMT in the ambulance. Because of that much stricter level of staffing required in Multnomah County, hiring has been really tough to be able to find paramedics because they are higher qualified. Other counties, Clackamas County and Washington County both only require 1 paramedic and 1 emergency medical technician. As you heard from Chief Lewis a couple weeks ago when he was here, in Troutdale, Gresham, Wood Village, and Fairview, there's almost 99% of the time, there's a fire paramedic on scene anyway, so there's always gonna be 2 paramedics on scene anyway. And of course, when the ambulance leaves the scene, somebody has to drive the ambulance, and that would be a paramedic, so they're not useful in the back. Gresham Fire says if they need us in the back, we stay and go with them in the ambulance. And so the problem has been that the Multnomah County Chair and her medical advisor, if you kind of went through some of the articles and stuff, have just resisted this, and they've made claims about studies that support their position. But the only study I've heard them claim is out of Korea, which is not really applicable to the United States because their medical system is completely different. And the studies that I've attached, I Googled studies on this issue, and all I find is studies like I put in your packet, which says there's no outcome differences that's discernible between 1 paramedic and 1 EMT versus 2 paramedics. And so the request is that someone make a motion to adopt a resolution that calls on Multnomah County to allow a pilot program. This is not a permanent change in policy, but it's to right now to remedy the slow ambulance response times to allow them to use EMTs with a paramedic. The cities of Portland, Gresham, and Fire District 10 have all passed similar resolutions calling on the county to please allow this pilot program so that we can increase response times to our citizens. I think that's as quick as concise as I can be.
Excellent. Questions? We all heard the chief last meeting, and without asking us to pass a resolution, I don't think he did. He explained what's wrong with the county's rule, which I fully share his view. Anyway, anyone else care to comment? I'll open it to public comment.
Just had a quick comment.
Yes,
I know it's
go
getting
ahead,
late.
Glenn.
To me, it's just another symptom of, the bad decision of House Bill 110, which legalized drugs, because I think it's really monopolizing their time. But I do agree that one paramedic on the rig is enough, because usually the other one isn't doing a whole lot. I'd like to hear from Counselor Warren, because I know he has a lot of experience in that field.
Yeah, I think you look across the nation, and one paramedic and one EMT is a standard. It's a standard in the rest of the state. It's a frustration in Multnomah County. And, I've talked to a lot of my colleagues and a lot of my colleagues that do fire. And whereas we all like to have more people that are higher qualified around us. I think it just makes us better. But the studies actually show that it's not necessarily more effective in our outcomes. And I think that it's more important for people to have medical care get to them and get them to a medical facility that's appropriate in a more reasonable amount of time than holding to these higher standards that only Multnomah County is trying to achieve. And also, I think it's a little disappointing when you have multiple people with degrees that are higher than mine and more experience in that direct field saying and telling you that this is going to be safe and we need to do something now, and to have the county and the county's medical director not listen to the people and at least provide this, again, change the model for the time being until, and then Oregon also, just as like a thing, Oregon requires its paramedics to have an associate's degree, and that is not the case across most of the nation. And so it's just, not that that's a bad thing. I think it's important to see when we're trying to hire paramedics and we're trying to have this expectation that we're going to have two, and there's already a nationwide shortage. It's a really hard thing to achieve and to be safe. And I think we're being unsafe, which is not in the benefit of the people. So.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just to add my own 2 cents. Bad on AMR for signing such a contract, but they entered into the contract. There needs to be some sort of penalty to AMR or whatever, but that's up for the county and AMR to figure out. But it is affecting community safety at this point, and I wholeheartedly support the resolution to show our support to get this changed. But they're not living up to their obligations, but they can't. But they signed a bad contract. But they have to figure out a way to make restitution to Multnomah County. But that's on them. The public shouldn't have to suffer for that. So just saying, I would support the resolution.
Sandy.
Yeah, I have a question. Is there a reason why there couldn't be a driver and a paramedic? Driver doesn't have to do anything other than, if you're on the way to the hospital, because generally that's what an ambulance is called for. There's somebody that can monitor your condition.
Yeah, Sandy, so when you're in an ambulance, you'll have one of them would drive and then the other one will be in the back. And if they are at a site where there's a firefighter, like and they deem that whatever they need more than one hand in the rear of the ambulance, then a firefighter paramedic would go with them. But that's kind of
one of the main points is that an EMT basic, which would be the other person, would be the person driving with the paramedic in the back.
So I'm confused. There is an EMT basic and there's a paramedic?
Currently, they have a paramedic system instead of a paramedic EMT basic.
And is that what they're looking to go to when they talk about only one paramedic, or are they talking about only one person in the vehicle?
No, there would be a paramedic and an EMT basic is what they're talking about going to.
There's always two people in the ambulance at all times. One just has a lower qualification around most of the United States.
Okay.
Multnomah County.
Okay, that helps a lot. Thank you.
All right, I think I'll open it to public comment on this item. Here in the room, does anyone care to address the ambulance staffing model reform issue? Could I ask Ray, I didn't actually see a resolution blank in my packet. And Portland's is titled Urge Multnomah County Chair to pilot an ambulance response model, etc. And Gresham and District 10 call it a resolution calling for urgent ambulance staffing model reform in Multnomah County. They don't look the same.
I didn't see it either.
Yeah, they don't look the same, and I wondered which one.
Yeah, I put in these,
Anyway, think about that. Let me take some public comment. The issue is the same.
All right, I had one.
Did you want to come up?
Yes. Troutdale resident. I think Councilor Juan hit the nail on the head when he was speaking about outcomes, right? So I think that's the general metric we really want to press. And what is the best outcome for our people who are harmed or receiving help by the ambulances. I do think that the two paramedic rule is unnecessary, and whatever can help hit the greatest outcomes from a response. And I think that the whole delay about getting the two paramedics and getting the buses out and moving is it doesn't really show the status of the courses that are available, because in research we've done in scouting, and we sponsor scholarships for EMTs, and it's very difficult to find teachers. And it's a backlog of the whole system. It's so it's not just AMR, it's the process and getting youth, school into the system with appropriate faculty and staff to put up the courses and different colleges and whatnot. Yeah, so I think outcomes is the key metric we should just keep driving over and over, and that's what we want to see as positive outcomes. And this applies not just to physical health and ambulance drivers, but it also carries forward over to behavioral health. And as we see people, response teams like Hope with the county, things like that, they follow the same model. There's a master level and an apprentice level. They go out and do the behavioral health response crisis events as well. And you don't see us changing that, sending two master's level clinicians out to a SMI type response. Is a master and a basic, I guess, the equivalent of what the national standard is for the physical response for the hospital and ambulances.
All right, well, thank you.
Nothing funny to say other than that. So,
anyone else here in the room? Anyone on Zoom care to address the council? Ray?
I was just going to say, Council President, I apologize that the resolution didn't get into your packet. It's on my computer and it went where it was supposed to go, but we just didn't get it included. According to our city attorney, if I read you the resolution, you can vote on it tonight, as long as somebody calls it by the proper heading, which is at the top of the staff report that you did get. So that would be an option, Council President, to
All
pass
right,
the
well,
resolution tonight.
we'll take that up.
How about a so moved after Ray says it? Okay.
We're still in public comment here,
Sorry.
so anyone on Zoom wish to address the council on this issue? And not seeing anyone, I will close the public comment, and if there's consensus on the council to move forward with the resolution, I'll invite Ray to read it. Anyone care to discuss it first? All right, carry on, Ray.
All right, thank you. And as soon as I'm done reading, just for your benefit, I will email it to you also immediately. A resolution calling for urgent ambulance staffing model reform in Multnomah County. This Troutdale City Council finds as follows: that the delivery of public safety services, fire and emergency medical services, and law enforcement services is a core responsibility of government. 2, Multnomah County under ORS 682.062 is mandated to develop ambulance and emergency medical services plans. These plans outline the provision and coordination of ambulance services within county jurisdiction, including staffing provisions. 3, the county has never meaningfully sought input from the city on how this important government function should operate. Multnomah County Ambulance Service Plan, first implemented in 1994, designated the entire county as a unified ambulance service area. It mandated that all ambulances dispatched for advanced life support ALS calls be staffed with 2 paramedics, and established a policy that ambulances shall reach ALS emergencies within 8 minutes, 90% of the time. There is a significant and compelling body of evidence that within the United States system of emergency medical response, there is no meaningful outcome difference for patients, whether an ambulance with 2 paramedics versus an ambulance with 1 paramedic and 1 emergency medical technician, EMT, responds. In 2016, the Multnomah County Board of Commissioners updated County Code Section 21, Section 4, Chapter 21, Section 406, granting exclusive authority over ambulance staffing, including any changes to the EMS medical director, with the Multnomah County chair as the sole individual empowered to demand action from department leadership, including the EMS medical director in her capacity as the county's chief hiring officer. 7, a drastic rise in medical 911 calls over recent years has placed an undue and extreme burden on medical first responders in Multnomah County. Major structural flaws in Multnomah County emergency medical response staffing system have been revealed, resulting in a critical ambulance shortage, leading to unprecedented incidences of level 0, no ambulance available to respond to emergencies, and delayed ambulance response times, putting the lives of Troutdale community members at risk. The increase in ALS calls and stagnation of any staffing model changes has had a profound negative impact on partner first responder agencies and workforce, particularly Gresham Fire Department, our contracted fire and emergency responder. A staffing model of 1 paramedic and 1 EMT, quote, the 1-1 model, has become the standard across the nation to respond to virtually all medical emergencies, and a proposal exists from Multnomah County's ambulance provider, American Medical Rescue, AMR, to pilot this model. Sadly, the county's EMS medical director and the county chair have refused to change the staffing policy, despite substantial evidence that there would be no adverse impact on those needing care. Our fire emergency service provider, the Gresham Fire Department, and the Gresham City Council support this change and have so informed the county. 11, the City Council implores Multnomah County EMS officer and the chair to pilot this 1-1 staffing model. The status of transport ambulances in the city of Troutdale is critically insufficient, and a 1 EMT and 1 paramedic model will make a significant improvement in the number of ambulances available to serve the Troutdale community. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Troutdale, Section 1, the City Council calls on the Multnomah County Chair to exercise her authority to direct the EMS Medical Director to immediately order a change in ambulance staffing to allow this 1-1 staffing model pilot program to combat the critical lack of ambulances available to respond to emergencies in the City of Troutdale. Section 2, this resolution shall take effect immediately upon adoption.
Yes, Glenn.
So moved. Good job, Ray.
Very good. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Unless there's further
Did somebody make a
discussion.
motion?
There was a motion. Glenn made the motion and Sandy seconded.
Okay, you don't have to like say it.
I just want to make
I
sure.
hope not.
He said, he didn't have to read the whole motion, he just said so moved.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
No, we don't want to mess it up.
Perfect. I second.
So
Give me a second. Sandy seconded.
Sandy actually said.
So excited to vote right now.
All right, we're gonna go for it.
Counselor Caswell,
Yes.
Counselor One,
Yes.
Counselor White,
Yes.
Counselor Wittrin,
Yes.
Counselor Glantz,
Yes.
President Ribmat.
Yes,
Yes.
all right. We'll see if the county listens.
Yeah.
They don't seem to
Because they
very
do
well,
all the
but anyway, we're moving on to a discussion of county's plans to changes to 257th Avenue.
Council President, I just will let you know before, this was an agenda item requested by Councilor White, and I will make sure I point out that very patiently, we've had two county employees, Stephen McWilliams and Emily Militich, who are on the call, just in case they have any questions. They're not making a presentation. They're just there if there's any questions because this is a county road, so they're available, and I will thank them publicly now for sitting there on the Zoom call for 3 hours now, waiting for us to get to this, so.
Go for it, Glenn.
All right, I'll make this quick. I was invited to go on the road tour of the section that's under question, and I believe Danny Steffes and a few others were there. And then we had the presentation from the county, and a lot of the stuff we brought up on that tour, landed in the cutting room floor, I guess. But when we were visited by Senator Gorsuch and Representative Zach Hudson, I brought it up to them because I was concerned about widening the bike lanes and shrinking the driving lanes and eliminating one freight lane. And he hadn't heard anything about it. I gave him my packet at that time, and then I recently followed up with his office, and he's asking for the council to write him a letter so he has something to go forward with to the county. He is the co-chair of the transportation board, and that's why I reached out to his office. And I believe he's concerned about it and willing to look into this. I think it's never been done. I may be wrong. This might be a question for the county, but I don't think we've ever eliminated a freight lane to widen a bike lane. And a lot of states don't even have bike lanes at all. And I couldn't help but noticing in the packet, when they showed a picture of a bicyclist, it wasn't even on that road, because they probably got tired of waiting for one to come along, is my guess. But I think there's a better way to fix this road, if it even needs fixing at all. And but I'd like to hear from public comment before I say anything else.
Anyone else?
Well, I'll just comment and say I believe Glenn has some genuine concerns. I mean, the truck traffic that goes from I-84 to 26 is pretty significant. And if the lanes are narrowing, I just want to make sure that there's been a thorough study of what that impact could be. And as we always talk about, the Multnomah County doesn't always seem, the impression is that they always don't seem to listen to Troutdale, or as Glenn said, things get left on the cutting room floor. So it is a major thoroughfare, or however you want to put it, but the narrowing is tough to swallow just from an instinctive standpoint. Now, this has been talked about for quite a while. It went to Planning Commission and came before us, and I don't know where we're at in the process or where Multnomah County is at in the process, but it was a concern then, and it's still a concern now, so.
It's my recollection that Multnomah County came and presented what they're going to do and did not really invite us to
add any.
Say what we wanted or not. They didn't. I'm not saying they were rude, but it's their road and they're going to do it, and they didn't care Well, I'm speculating that they really didn't care too much what we thought. And I'm worried about that. However, Glenn brought up the idea of writing a letter to our Senator Gorsuch, who has maybe some sway, and that might be more effective. I'm not saying we shouldn't say what we think or what we want to the county, because the county usually listens a bit, but they're going to spend a lot of money on this, and we actually, at least some of us, think it's going to make things worse because it's such an important artery. And I like the idea of a letter of us sending a letter to Senator Gorsuch. That seems like it might do some good. It's worth a try. Yes, Ray.
The only thing I could offer is that the concern appears to be the lane shrinking, freight lanes, safety, trucks, that if the county officials want to at least respond to that issue, what studies they've done. And I just have to repeat what our traffic engineer, Travis Holden, tells us, quite often is that, if we get a driver's license, we all think we're traffic engineers, and because we drive. And I think, if they were willing to answer that question or concern, or at least explain their feeling on that, that might be helpful, since they are the people who do this work. So.
Well, since they're listening in, I invite their response to that idea.
Yeah, hi there. We're more than happy to jump in and answer any specific questions, and certainly address your concern that you have. My name is Emily Militich. I'm the engineering services manager that oversees this project. And with me, I have Stephen McWilliams, who is our project manager. So Stephen can really get into the details of exactly what the lane allocations will look like. But before we kind of get into that, I wanted just to maybe provide some context for kind of how this project came about, and then some of the information that we've heard to date to support kind of the ultimate design that we've got going forward. So first, just wanted to clarify that we are not taking away any lanes in this section of 257th. So it will remain a 2-lane in each direction with a center turn lane. So that is not changing. I think really the big impact is going from, in some sections, we have lanes that are as wide as about 12 feet, and we will be making those consistent throughout the corridor at 11 feet. And currently there are sections of 257th north of Cherry Park that are 11 feet. So this is just sort of making those 2 travel lanes in each direction consistent all the way through from Cherry Park to Stark Street. And really the kind of main driver behind that was when we did our public outreach process, which was kind of a robust over probably about 4-month process, where we went out to various, we had online surveys, we did walking tours, we met with community engagement liaisons. We really heard from the community that speed and safety were major concerns on this corridor. And one of the benefits of doing the lane reductions is actually that it helps to slow down traffic, because for drivers, when we see kind of big open areas, we tend to feel naturally like you can drive faster, versus when areas are more compressed, then you can compress them in such a way that it doesn't increase conflict between vehicles, but it just gives you the impression that you should be driving at a slower speed. So that's really one of the main benefits of reducing those lanes from, in some areas, 12 to the 11-foot cross section.
I can add on here that like I said, there's parts of here that we're really not actually changing any lane allocation at all. It's going to go back existing after repaving. It's only south of Cherry Park where that travel lane would be going from a 12-foot to 11. This fits also, well within design criteria of all 3 national standards, AASHTO, as well as county standards in our design and construction manual, and ODOT blueprint for urban design manual. For a street like this, it does convey high amount of vehicles per day, we would in no way be able to take away any lanes and still convey that amount of traffic that it still needs to convey. So that was off the table from the very start. So this is just one of a multifaceted approach to lower speeds on 257th. This, in conjunction with radar feedback signage, has shown to lower speeds. For the pedestrian crossings, there will be refuge islands, which tend to have that effect to calm traffic. And then we're also looking at, after these things are installed, we're going to do a study to see if we can lower the posted speed, which may have an effect to have most of the drivers follow that speed as well. So it's a multifaceted approach to address what we heard during our public outreach phases to lower speeds and increase safety.
Yeah, you might not have heard me correctly. I wasn't implying that a lane was going to be closed down. I know there's going to be 2 lanes, but we were told at your last presentation that there'd be 1 freight lane for trucks and then a narrower lane for vehicular traffic.
So with the 11 foot per lane, both of those are still adequate for conveying traffic. So there will be no sort of restriction in which lane the trucks can use or not use. So that allocation won't change. And the 11 feet is within the design standard for freight routes.
Well, I'll review the minutes and verify that.
All right, well, thank you for the explanation. Let's open it up to public comment. Does anyone here? Oh, I'm sorry, Sandy. Hang on. Sandy, go ahead.
Yep. I have a question. Was there any consideration given to alternate ways to keep those lanes a little wider between Cherry Park and Halsey for wind? Because I've already seen, even with the current widths, that's right where that east wind blasts in, and a semi truck is a perfect target with 18 inches on each side to sway a little bit from the wind, and then have some of those the narrowing occur from Cherry Park south.
Councillor Glantz, I believe that these changes start at the top of that hill, which is Sturgis Road to the west and Cherry Park to the east.
So the lower part stays the same?
Just a short section of that road where we're going to have a speed change, a narrowing, and then beyond that, Gresham owns their road, and they have no plans to join in on this narrowing of the lanes. And as far as I know, that's the last I heard.
Thank you.
All right, I'll open it for public comment, please.
Shelby Stephenson. I'm coming on behalf of the Public Safety and Equity Advisory Committee. So we had a meeting last week, so I'll just read our statement. We came up with a statement, but it was kind of rushy and hard to get all of our thoughts together in the time period. So I'm just to read it to you. The Public Safety and Equity Advisory Committee had a presentation from the county on February 1st, 2024 regarding the upgrades planned for 257th. The committee had many questions and concerns. As a follow-up, the county provided documentation for the reasoning behind some of the proposed upgrades. We discussed further at our meeting on March 7th, 2024. Based on the committee's concerns, we are asking the council to take action on the subject. Some of our concerns are the documentation contradicting the narrowing of lanes in a freight corridor. Narrowing lanes impedes safety vehicles. The crosswalks don't take into account a holistic approach, specifically our concern for 17th, and noted no data collected on bike usage or a bike traffic study. And so I will read you the verbiage from that we were questioning the documentation that county provided to our chair And then she provided it to us, the documentation. And there's this sentence in here that says, street sections with lane widths of 11, 12, or 13 feet in urban settings with a 20 to 25 or 30 to 35 mile per hour speed limit that do not serve as a transit or freight corridor should be considered first for lane width reductions. So there is the emphasis on the freight corridor, which is, and 257th is a freight corridor. So I think when we have, cars can't go on in every place, bikes can't go in every place. So I just think we should honor the fact that this is a freight corridor. And so, so I guess I shouldn't add that. Our committee talked about a lot of things. So I read our statement, and then my other comment is as a private citizen, because we couldn't address everything fast enough in the time, is that looking at the crosswalk that they're proposing at 17th, it might have been convenient for the students, but it's between Cherry Park and Hensley, and I can just see traffic stopping there like crazy. That's not a very far distance, really, to students will come out. So maybe it'll only be a time when the students are out, and otherwise nobody will be crossing during those times. But I think since this is a freight corridor, we have to honor that. And then the other crosswalk at 28th, I don't know why 25th wasn't considered, because 28th is awfully close to Stark. It's kind of next to that property that might become, maybe they think it's going to become an apartment complex. It's that field kind of by the gas station. So I think 20th is right in that area. And 25th would be kind of more halfway between Hensley and Stark. Might make more sense. It's not a T pattern, so I'm just not, it was never one of the ones that was considered on the survey. So, but I don't know if there's some traffic reason why it couldn't be. But again, we got to think about how often we do this if this is a freight corridor. And I do understand pedestrians who have to cross, and we have a long period, a long ways between them. More likely someone's going to jet across, and there could be a fatality. We don't want that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the room?
It's me again. Okay, so Sherry Winters, and I am on public safety. I'm gonna read this. I have more to say. I'm trying to abide by my time limits. Do not time me, Ray. Okay, so I only live a few blocks away from 257th, and I drive it daily, seeing big trucks in all lanes. I was involved in the surveys, the walking tour, and gave my input when I could on this project. I will say that they said that they would keep me up to date as things came through, and I never heard again. And they had my email and all that information, so I was disappointed with that. On the walking tour that I attended, we talked about the problems with the sidewalks, the obstructions in the sidewalks, the overgrowth, the debris, and how it is not wide enough. We also talked about the bike lanes that are riddled with debris, and also the water drains that are in the way for bikers. We talked about signs being blocked from overgrowth. I know I mentioned over and over again that at night when it's been raining, some of the lights don't work well, and it's hard to even see the lines sometimes on the road. So we talked pothole issues, street noise, and the crosswalks that were so far apart. So the survey asked questions, but they never mentioned anything about lane narrowing. I believe the public would have stuff to say about that if they knew. I also want to mention that over these 30 years that I've lived here, the volume of traffic on this road has increased. I couldn't tell you how much, but I can remember many fields with cabbage and berries when I first moved out here, and none of which exist now. I have ridden, because I'm a bike rider, I have ridden a bike for nearly 20 years, and it's a road bike, so smaller tires. In the early years, I did ride on 257th, both north and south, and the speed limit was faster, and yet I was not bothered by riding it. But after some years, the increase in the volume of traffic and the debris riddling the bike lane made riding my bike unsafe on 257. So I discovered new ways to get to downtown Troutdale and a whole lot further. It mostly just keeps me off 257 and is far more enjoyable and safe. Hardly takes any more time and has certainly saved me on some flat tires and honking horns. Debris in a bike lane is especially dangerous for a road bike. Currently, the county doesn't sweep often enough, and at our meeting, it couldn't even provide us with that schedule. Quite frankly, sweeping would probably be required weekly in a freight corridor to make it be bike friendly. And I stopped today and I took some pictures of the street, and you're welcome to see it. And I will say, a bike lane line, you can go a ways into it and it looks clear, and then the mess, because that's where tires have gone to move the rocks out of that position. Otherwise, so a bike lane would have to be ginormous and swept often on that road that is the freight corridor. So I also want to say, so in my humble opinion, I believe that the big push to increase biking within the metropolitan area just causes a greater divide and intolerance of cyclists. Just like every road shouldn't have to have big semi trucks coming through all the time, neither should every road need to have bicycle lanes. Roads that have big trucks traveling on them regularly throughout the day and night are called freight corridors. These are roads that shouldn't have bike lanes if there are viable options nearby. So 238th created simply to be one with a gigantic path on one side away from traffic. It goes up, it runs into, at the top, a fairly large sidewalk offset with tree strip and stuff, and then also a bike lane on there. And so that provides a great option, as well as Buxton and going behind the elementary school. You know, so I totally think that's a great route and an option. So the county's pushing for the lane narrowing, and its own data it contradicts what they're pushing for. I would say also my suggestion for when a bicyclist has to travel a shorter distance on 257 is that the sidewalk be increased using most of the existing bike lane. The cyclists can share the increased sidewalk size with walkers. Please keep in mind, the county collected no data on actual bike usage on 257. And I, of course, could provide anecdotal data. Rarely is there a bike rider on this road. I have concerns regarding the pedestrian crossings suggested in this project, especially the one on 17th. And the county couldn't address the concerns of additional congestion and pollution, nor could they account for how the crosswalks would allow emergency vehicles to trigger it. Emergency vehicles are larger and need a wider lane.
I don't tell you to stop. I yield my time.
Thank you. And the inner lane for them could present many challenges. Now I understand both lanes are getting shrunk, not just one. So I would also say I'd question that the actual survey size is inadequate. And trucking companies were never surveyed for their input. So I have other things, but in lieu of my time being out, I'll just say thanks, and I strongly encourage you to reject the county's proposed current plans.
Thank you.
Good evening, Woodard Troutdale resident. My comments begin with true love. When I moved to Troutdale, I pulled a trailer into town. Wasn't sure where I wanted to live, as I had just recently transferred up here from Phoenix. And found a little place, a little RV park right there outside of Troutdale. And then I set about convincing my wife to move up. And that was a little challenging. But we found this gorgeous fifth wheel that's 102 inches wide. And I'm not really that great at pulling it yet. And but we found it, we pulled it in over at the RV park on the Sandy River, and shrinking those lanes terrifies me. I mean, 102 isn't 11 feet, right? It's not even 10 feet, but still, I know that there's enough recreational vehicle users in this city, visiting our city, that any type of limiting on that major thoroughfare is gonna have a significant impact on return visitors, people trying to do their thing. And anyway, I just think that's a significant issue. It'll break my wife's heart, so please don't do that. And oh, and then just for fun, I went to get a battery today to get my motorcycle running, and I drove up 57, and the bike lane is hammered. I mean, there is debris and crap all over the place. I mean, it looks like cinder blocks. We use ash. What do they use to ice the roads here? Is it sand?
Sand, gravel.
It looked more like ash. It looked like chunks of coal, right? All over the place. No bike paths, no bike tread marks through the bike lane. And same with the sidewalk. It was just, especially the the western sidewalk. It was like mountainous terrain. It was like every little block was pitched up and down, pitched up and down, holes everywhere. The maintenance piece of that is just ridiculous. So in short, because I yielded my time to my younger sister, yes, true love. Please make my wife happy. Don't shrink the lanes so I can take her out and visit all the cool places. And definitely look at more maintenance for those bike lanes and sidewalks. I mean, they're wrecked. People aren't using them because they're wrecked. I don't know if we were to have somebody sweep them or do some maintenance on them or whatever, maybe that might improve usability or functionality. I don't know. But I'd hate to try and drive my 102-inch wide trailer through them and try and keep everybody safe. So.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? In the council, I see Alan's got a hand up in the, oh, Tammy, are you?
Yeah, might as well.
You're
Good evening, Council President Rittman, councilors, Tanny Steffenson, Troutdale resident. I did hear the presentation on this, and I just have a couple of questions. You know, what does somebody do after Sturgis or after Stark when all this changes? So you kind of in like the twilight zone, and then you go into something else after you pass it? It seems like we're doing this for a very small section of road. And, you know, I remember years ago when the county had a conversation with Troutdale, and Troutdale had concerns over the vacated right-of-way on 238. And the county said, we are going to come out and we're going to do improvements to 257. Is this really what they were talking about? Because I don't know if Troutdale would have been as supportive of they were of the 238 project if they knew this is what was going to happen to 257. Because at that time we knew that freight traffic was going to get pushed to 257. And I've talked to a number of people in the trucking industry, and they said, doesn't matter how wide the lane is, they're going to go to the left lane if there's a bicycle on the right side. They're going to move. And we've already said the lanes aren't that wide. So how exactly is that going to work when you got one semi passing another semi? Or a fire truck has to pass a semi? And we're adding a number of crosswalks. And, you know, part of the issue with this, when I did the walking tour, was there's a little maintenance issue. You've got weeds, blackberries, grass, broken sidewalk, raised sidewalk. It's not really maybe up to a standard that we would all appreciate. And so what is the maintenance plan for this going forward? I didn't hear of one. Because you're adding things that are going to cost more money than what you have today. So how's that being funded? How's that going to be taken care of? How do we know that it's not going to look worse in a year? You know, adding improvements is a good thing, but I mean, it would have been great if we were told on the walking tour that they were going to shrink lanes. Because I think some people probably would have walked out into traffic at that time. They would have been so freaked out. And I did hear Mr. McWilliams say a number of times that the primary thing that they're working towards is speed. And I don't know that the Atkins Road diet is going to get us there as far as speed goes. What if we drop the speed limit? What if we did some different things? But you know, it is a freight corridor. And shrinking the lanes and putting bike lanes in, is that going to get us less speed? Is that going to get us safer? Some of the studies that they did that they referenced in their report were done in California. As a matter of fact, in one report, I believe it was out of USC, all the areas that were studied, Santa Monica, LA, places that really kind of relate to Troutdale. It really didn't seem to be the best. And then there was another report, and I don't recall it, but it talked about a number of areas where they've done this with freight corridors, right? They've done something like this. Philadelphia, Denver, San Francisco, different places. I don't know that we've really studied the effect on a road like this, in a situation like this. And I'm all for being different than Gresham, but maybe this isn't the time. I just think this one needs a little bit more thought. And I know it's their road, but we have to live it. You know, the people that did 238 have moved on. They don't come down the hill and have to slam their brakes on because traffic stopped at the bottom, right? Any of us ever experienced that? Pardon me? I didn't hear you, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You know, and again, it's a freight corridor. We need to consider that. Thank you.
Thanks. I'll go to, on Zoom, I see Alan's hand. It's Carol or Rich?
Hi, this is Rich Allen, Troutdale. Carol, let me have my computer back. I appreciate it. So you ever hear anything that just goes in contradiction to everything you've experienced and know throughout the years? I mean, many of us have lived here for decades. And many of you know that I have my CDL. I've owned semi-trucks. I've driven trucks and trailers up and down 238th and 257th. And I've driven travel trailers with pickups up and down, well, not 238th, but 257th I have. And part of that is 257th, whether it's the freight corridor or not, it is by de facto the preferred route for many truckers because it's a smoother grade. However, I noticed that what happens when you've got a semi truck that's going slow up the hill, everybody's going to try to pass it. And if there are other vehicles pulling a trailer, it's going to try to pass it. And what do you think is going to happen to the pedestrian who's sitting in their little safe spot when smaller traffic and trucks collide? When you make a lane more narrow, you really are actually physically closing the distance between the heavier trucks and the lighter vehicles. You're closing that distance. People are slowing down because they're scared, because you're adding danger. This is huge red flags. Now, let's look back on, I'm looking around the room and we've lived here a long time. Let's look back. How many times do you see a bicyclist on 257? Would that be the route you choose? How many times do you see a semi-truck? Quite often. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's more semi-trucks on 257th than on 238th. 238th is a harder road to drive up when you're driving a semi. You would only do it if your point to point is really close and you're just trying to make up some time. Anyway, so as you can tell, I'm not in favor of this. I just don't see how we can do such a move that's going to make our environment worse and harder. And what do we do after it's done? And things are worse. Do we go, oh, sorry, it was based on a study somewhere else that isn't characteristic of Troutdale? So please reconsider this. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. Anyone else on Zoom wish to address the council? Looks like Paul Wilcox. Go forward.
You're on mute, Paul.
Sorry. Thanks, Councilor Redmond, Paul Wilcox, Troutdale. A couple of my comments have been touched on, but I'll expand a bit. My major issue with the changes has been, and this has been expressed at other previous meetings with other groups, is the Southwest 17th Way enhanced crossing. I've done some measurements using Google Maps for that stretch of 257th. I measured, it's a quarter mile between Cherry Park 16th and Hensley. And the 17th Way crossing would be just slightly north of Midway. So you're looking at only, an eighth of a mile between Cherry Park 16th and Southwest 17th. So you, especially when school gets out of Reynolds High School, you're going to have southbound traffic being stopped right after they pass Cherry Park. You've got school traffic turning right off of Cherry Park onto South 257th. So for that period of time anyway, it's just going to be total gridlock as far as I can foresee. Introducing a stop that close to another intersection, plus the fact that you've got two fully signaled intersections at Cherry Park 16th and Hensley. Why put another signal, in between the two of them? Another thing about the 17th crossing is the eastern terminus. It doesn't continue to the east. It tees at the crosswalk on 257th. So if a student wants to continue east, they're going to have to divert either north to 16th or south to Hensley. So they're not saving any travel steps. Another aspect of the 17th crossing is that 257th northbound takes kind of a slow, slight left curve there, kind of a left sweeping curve toward the high school. And I've actually seen two cars crashed into the field just south of the medical offices there at 16th and 257th, two different instances. And what they do is they don't make that curve. They go straight right over the top of where there's actually a Troutdale wellhead there, which has had some of their infrastructure taken out by these cars that don't make the curve. You can ask Public Works about that. So if somebody doesn't make that curve, they go, straight through where a pedestrian might have just finished crossing the street. So that's not a very safe place to be finishing your crosswalk. I think it probably covered 17th pretty well. As far as I also have problems with bike lanes on 257th. I don't think you can make the bike lanes wide enough to make them safe. This has also been covered by other people. I used to drive tractor trailers, so I know. Danny actually mentioned this in talking to professionals. If I'm passing a bicyclist in the bike lane and I'm in the right travel lane, I'm not going to pass that bicyclist. I'm going to move over to the left through lane, because you've got double and triple trailers traveling through there, and somebody's on a bicycle on a skinny tire bike slips on a piece of gravel, they're going to go right underneath your trailer tires. so I'm not going to stay in that lane next to a bicycle. If I can't move over into the left through lane, I'm going to follow that bicycle till they turn off, or some other way, some other how get out of the traffic lane. So I think that covers it. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Paul. Anyone else on Zoom wish to make public comment? All right, well, we'll close the public comment. This is a discussion item. I think I'm convinced that we wish the county would reconsider, but I don't know just how to convince the county. So it's your item, Glenn.
Well, my hope is it would not hurt to get Senator Gorsuch involved, since he is the co-chair of the Transportation Committee.
All right.
And his staff is willing to look into this, but they are asking for a letter from us asking for that.
All right.
And I did not draft a letter. I didn't know how this was going to go tonight, and I think it'd be appropriate to have.
Well, does anyone on council object to having a letter drafted? Staff gets the picture. I would favor that, and unless there's an objection, let's just direct staff to please prepare a letter, and if you want the mayor to sign it and send it off to Chris Gorsuch, that would be excellent. And with that, let's move on to Ray, to an update on the Public Safety Services Delivery Working Group.
All right, thank you, Council President. I will make this really fast as much as I can, because you'll get another one next council meeting. The Public Safety Working Group met on March 4th. Our primary topic was fire. A number of action steps came out of that meeting. I have 6 of them on my list that I'll be doing. They wanted to explore the opportunity to find out what it would cost to create a Troutdale Three Cities Fire Department, which was explored a little bit in the 2014 PSU study. So I'm going to explore a consultant to be able to do that. Second of all, they wanted more information on how our fire district worked. So Mike McKeel, who's on the board of Fire District 10, is going to come to our next meeting on August 8th to answer any questions about how fire districts work. Number 3, I'm going to reach out to Econ Northwest, who did an economic analysis for Gresham in May of 2022 regarding financial impact of a fire district, to ask them if they could do one just for Troutdale. 4, I'm going to be attending a Fire District 10 board meeting just to update them on the things that we're thinking on Troutdale and get their reaction from their board in terms of potentially going back to Fire District 10, asking the citizens to do that and see their thoughts. Number 5, I'm going to see if I can get some information about Gresham's intentions right now. They have pretty much, not necessarily meanly, but they've ignored requests to talk about these issues, fire district and or renewing our contract, to find out if they're just waiting to May 21st, excuse me, because they have a ballot measure on May 21st to provide them more money for 5 years for fire and police, and their position may change after May 21st if they win or lose. And so I'm trying to figure out, is that's why maybe they're not calling us back. And then finally, I'm going to search out, and there are a number of them out there, a consultant who can help us understand what would be the steps and process if we were to refer a measure to the citizens to join a fire district. What would that process look like? So the next meeting is on April 8th before our April 9th meeting, and hopefully we'll have a bunch of those done by then, and I can add that to report after they meet on the 8th.
All right, thanks.
And just to elaborate, when we talk about how a fire district works, it was more about how, if we had a fire district, how the city interacts with it, how much autonomy we would have, how much control we would have, input we would have. That was a big subject for us during the working group, is being a fire district, just how that interaction would happen. So that's
Okay,
a
good.
big
I'm
question.
glad
we
you're
wanna-
looking into that. That's very important. Let's move on to item 10, mayor's nomination of Counselor 1 to replace our. Could I just ask as a point of order? Oh, I forgot to invite public comment, didn't I?
Yep.
Paul, I sometimes get carried away. Did you want to comment? Does anyone want to make public comment, either in chamber or online, on the Public Safety Services Delivery Working Group report? That was the last item. And hearing nothing, we'll move on to the next thing. And I just have a point of order. Did Mayor Lauer nominate Counselor 1 already, or was he going to do it tonight here at the meeting?
No, well, he had already nominated him.
It's
to be-
officially nominated. I'm in favor of supporting it. It's
Yes,
just.
he officially nominated him to take his place, and I guess we'll call it a recess appointment, in that pending council's approval pursuant to the charter, Counselor 1 has been serving for the last 2 meetings on the Public Safety.
So I
Working Group.
understand, and that's fine.
And I'll just say, as chair of that committee, and already having Counselor 1 on there for the last couple of meetings, the interaction is good, the point of view is good, and I'm very comfortable moving forward.
All right.
I would say I would make a motion to have Counselor 1 replace Mayor Lauer on the Public Safety Services Delivery Working Group.
I'll second.
Okay, yeah, I think it's, the mayor nominates and we confirm, essentially.
Right.
And that's what we'll take that motion to be. And the second, Sandy, any comments? Questions? Okay, let's call the roll.
Counselor Caswell,
Yes.
Counselor 1,
Yes.
Counselor White,
Yes.
Counselor Wittrin,
Yes.
Counselor Glantz,
Yes.
President Ritma.
Yes. All right, congratulations.
Thanks.
Let's move on to agenda item number 11, staff communications.
Thank you, Council President. Just a couple things. Tomorrow night is the Planning Commission meeting. They will be dealing with the conditional use permit for the new indoor pickleball court that's down at the Troutdale Marketplace, which is obviously, a very popular sport. Number 2, due to spring break, we always take the second meeting of March off, which of course is to prepare you for number 3, which is in April. We will have a council meeting on the 9th and then budget committee meetings on the 15th and 17th of April right now. So prepare yourselves that even though we have 1 meeting in March, we're going to have at least 3 in April. That's all I have, Council President.
Excellent. Okay, council communications. We'll start with Councilor Caswell.
Yep, nothing for me.
Okay, Counselor 1.
Nothing for me.
All right, good. Counselor White.
Real quick, the smelt came in the Sandy River, not this last Friday, but the Friday before that. And they're still running, which is, the run used to be maybe 3 to 5 days. So it's a huge run. I'm just really disappointed that the state would not open it up. They were concerned about the salmon smolts in the Sandy River, but I just want to say there's no bycatch. I rent the nets and I see people bring their limits up. I've never once seen a salmon smolt or fry salmon get caught. As you can see the smelt as they're going up, and you can target them. And I don't see any other fish joining in their school. I did see one time an adult steelhead was caught though. So that was a very unique situation. So it's just a big boost to our economy. We're known for that. And it's bigger than any event we have that like our art festivals or even the old Summer Fest, and it goes on for days, and people come from Canada, Montana, Idaho. It's a great food source. It's a really healthy food. And I'm just really disappointed. I'd like, if staff could do me a favor and find out who I need to talk to, because I would like to meet with them and just let them know from a local perspective what went wrong. We agreed to close it, but now it looks like they're never going to reopen it. So I'm concerned about that.
I will find out who the fish biologist is over this district.
It's worth going down to the Troutdale Bridge and just look. You can see them. I mean, it's a treat. Okay, Councilor Wood.
It's been a long night, and just thank you, everybody. I know it's tiring, but it's good work that we all do.
Okay, Sandy Glantz.
Yep, happy spring break. That's it for me.
I'll echo that and move we adjourn. Oh, I probably shouldn't move.
No, I make a motion we adjourn for this evening. Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.
That was a stacked agenda, but we got spring break, so it was worth it.